My rich wife laughed, announcing our divorce. Finally free of him. I smiled and said, "Indeed." Then reality hit her hard when she realized the prenup entitled me to 85% of our assets, and her laughter turned to frantic bargaining. If laughter were currency, my wife would have been a billionaire that night. There she was, Clara, standing under the chandelier glow like it was her personal spotlight, in a red dress so scandalously perfect it looked like it came with its own NDA. The charity gala was supposed to be about raising money for children's hospitals, but somehow she turned it into a farewell party for our marriage. I watched her from across the ballroom as she tossed her head back, champagne glass in hand, laughing like someone who just deleted her student loans and her conscience in one night. "Finally free of him," she shouted, loud enough to make the jazz band pause mid-sax. The crowd around her, her co-workers, her mother's bridge club friends, and that one guy who sells overpriced art no one understands, burst out laughing with her. I could practically see the hashtag forming in their minds. Hashtag finally free, hashtag girl boss. I just smiled. Calm, cool, collected. I raised my glass of club soda because someone had to drive the drama queen home, and said, "Indeed." That one word hit the room like a dropped mic. You could have heard a fork hit the filet mignon from 3 tables over. The laughter stopped, her glass froze midair, and every rich bored donor in the room suddenly remembered they had morals, or at least better things to look at. Clara blinked at me like I'd just leaked a spoiler for her favorite Netflix show. "Excuse me," she said, that fake sweet tone women use when they're calculating how many witnesses are around before they throw something. "Indeed," I repeated, taking a slow sip like a man who just found peace in carbonation. The room went silent except for the violinist trying to decide whether to keep playing or fake an emergency. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered. The awkwardness was so thick you could have spread it on toast. Clara tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out brittle, like a champagne flute right before it shatters. Her friends started avoiding eye contact like cowards abandoning a sinking ship. I leaned back in my chair, still smiling, and thought, "You wanted an audience? Here it is." I didn't plan that moment. It just happened. Years of quiet endurance, passive-aggressive dinners, and subtle jabs disguised as jokes had built up like pressure in a shaken soda bottle. All I did was open the cap, and man, did it fizz. The host of the gala, a guy with more hair gel than sense, awkwardly tapped his microphone and said, "Well, let's thank everyone for their generous donations tonight," trying to move things along. Clara, still frozen, forced another laugh, the kind you do when you realize your social stock just tanked. I could almost see her mental spreadsheet recalculating future invitations. "Mason, darling," she said through a tight smile. "You really shouldn't joke like that." "You're right," I said. "It's not a joke. If looks could kill, I'd have been a headline." I could feel the heat radiating off her like a malfunctioning hairdryer. The waiters tried to pretend they didn't notice, but one of them, this young guy in his 20s, gave me that look men give other men when someone's finally getting what's been coming. The universal "good for you, bro" face. I stayed seated, calm, like the villain who doesn't need to raise his voice because the monologue's already written. Meanwhile, Clara tried to recover by talking louder, switching topics, and laughing again like nothing happened. "Anyway, ladies," she chirped, "some men just can't handle a strong woman." A few nervous giggles floated around, but no one was buying it anymore. The illusion cracked. See, that's the thing about public humiliation. It only hurts when it's undeserved. I had receipts. And a prenup that could double as a doomsday device. She didn't know that yet. Oh, but she would. The night went on in slow motion. I chatted politely, shook hands with donors, smiled for photos, and even made small talk with a senator who thought my name was Martin. Meanwhile, Clara kept glancing my way, trying to gauge if I was about to explode or stay zen. Spoiler alert, I stayed zen. Because silence, my friend, is underrated revenge. It's like watching someone light a fuse and realize too late it's attached to their own dress. Around 11 p.m., the band played a slow number, and couples started dancing. Clara, bless her delusional heart, tried to pretend everything was fine. She strutted over, heels clicking like a warning bell, and said, "We should at least dance for appearances." I looked up deadpan. "You already made enough of those for the both of us." She huffed. "You're unbelievable. And you're free," I said. "Congratulations." That shut her up. For once, I didn't dance that night. I sat back and watched her twirl with some guy from the marketing firm who looked like he moisturizes his emotions. Every spin, every fake smile, it all screamed damage control. The crowd pretended to enjoy the music, but the whispers had started. Did you hear what she said? He said indeed. Oh, he's getting everything in the divorce. Not wrong, strangers. Not wrong. As the gala wrapped up, I shook a few more hands, thanked the host, and grabbed my coat. Clara was still talking to her friends, probably drafting the narrative for tomorrow's brunch. He embarrassed me publicly. I was the victim. Sure, sweetheart. If victims wear $2,000 heels and start the fight. I walked out to the valet stand, tipped the guy 20, and stood under the cold night air, breathing in freedom for the first time in years. It didn't even feel real yet. My phone buzzed. Raymond, my lawyer and unofficial guardian angel of pettiness, had texted me earlier. Remember, Mason, you've got the prenup of the century. If she leaves, you win. I'd laughed when he said that months ago. Didn't think I'd need it. But now, that little document was aging better than fine wine. I climbed into the car, leaned back, and let the night replay in my head. Her laughter, the crowd's silence, the way she'd frozen when I said, indeed. It wasn't just a word. It was the moment the power shifted. For years, she'd been the one with control, dictating dinner plans, vacations, even what kind of furniture fit her aesthetic. But that night, she lost her script. And me? I found mine. As I drove away from the ballroom lights fading in the rear view, I didn't feel angry, just amused. Because somewhere in that red dress and glittering arrogance, Clara had no idea she'd just triggered her own financial downfall. And the best part? I wouldn't have to raise my voice, throw a tantrum, or even post a cryptic Instagram story. All I had to do was let the legal system do what it does best, reward the prepared. When I got home, I poured myself a whiskey, not soda this time, and toasted to irony. Finally free of him, she'd said. If only she knew freedom came with an invoice. And as the clock hit midnight, I smiled, leaned back on my couch, and whispered to the empty room. Just for me. Indeed. If silence were a weapon, that car could have started World War III. The moment we left the gala, Clara slammed the door like she was auditioning for a Fast and Furious spin-off called Passive Aggression Drift. Her red dress shimmered under the streetlights. Her perfume clouded the air, and her anger could have powered the car better than the gas. I started the engine, nice and calm, like a man who already knew how the movie ended. We drove down Main Street in pure silence, the kind that hums with tension, broken only by the sound of her clicking her nails against her phone like a typewriter of fury. I could practically hear her typing up a group chat message to her friends. He humiliated me in public, in front of everyone. Yeah, sweetheart, that's what happens when you declare emotional bankruptcy at a charity gala. Aren't you going to beg? She finally hissed, voice sharp enough to slice through the tension. Beg? I said, eyes on the road. For what? You already seem happy. She turned to me, mascara smudged from the tears she was too proud to admit were forming. You'll regret this, Mason. My lawyer will bury you. I almost smiled. Oh, sweetheart. My lawyer doesn't bury people. He files them neatly under defeated. She let out this fake laugh, the kind that sounds like it's made of glass shards. You think you're so clever. You think that prenup means anything? I'll fight it. Sure, I said, taking a turn. You can fight gravity too, but I wouldn't recommend it. She glared at me like I'd personally kicked her favorite designer purse. I swear if looks could kill, my obituary would have read, local man dies of attitude exposure. The whole time, I kept my cool. Because you know what's scarier than an angry man? A calm one who already packed his emotional bags. The car's Bluetooth lit up with a call. Raymond Holt, my lawyer, of all people. I hit ignore. Clara raised a brow. Who was that? My lawyer. Why's your lawyer calling you at midnight? Probably to congratulate me on my patience. That earned me another glare. She turned back to the window, and we drove past the glittering city lights. People laughing outside restaurants, couples holding hands, life moving on while my marriage decomposed quietly in a Lexus. She muttered something under her breath, something about, after everything I've done for you. Oh yeah, here we go, the nostalgia guilt speech. Everything you've done for me, I repeated. You mean maxing out my Amex on throw pillows and spa retreats labeled as self-care? I supported your dreams, she snapped. You supported my dreams the way a cat supports furniture, by clawing at it whenever it looked too comfortable. That shut her up for a second. I swear I could feel the temperature drop 5 degrees inside the car. She crossed her arms like a toddler denied a toy. You're heartless, she said. No, I replied. I'm just done renting space in my soul to someone who charges emotional late fees. For a while, the only sound was the hum of the tires and the GPS politely reminding us to turn left in 400 feet, which, honestly, had better communication skills than we did. I glanced at her reflection in the window, eyes red, lips trembling, but still trying to look unbothered. Clara was many things: vain, dramatic, allergic to accountability, but predictable was her superpower. I knew the phases: anger, denial, blame, then retail therapy. She was currently on phase 1, halfway to phase 2. I almost felt bad. Almost. The funny thing is, this wasn't new to me. Heartbreak was hereditary in my family. My father lost half his fortune in a messy divorce because he believed in love instead of lawyers. I was 12 when I watched him sign away his business, his house, and half his sanity. He told me, "Son, marry with your heart, but sign with your head." So, at 28, when I married Clara, the woman who could sell air if she put it in a fancy bottle, I made sure the prenup was airtight enough to survive nuclear winter. She'd laughed at it once, waving her wine glass. You think I'd ever leave you? She said. Of course not, I'd replied. But let's not take chances. Hurricanes happen. Well, guess who's laughing now? Hint, not her. I glanced over at her, still glaring out the window like a villain in a soap opera. You're not even going to say you're sorry? She asked. For what? For humiliating me tonight. Clara, you humiliated yourself. I just provided lighting. She gasped, clutching her chest like I'd insulted the queen. You're cruel. No, I'm concise. The car stopped at a red light. Outside, a couple crossed the street hand in hand, laughing. Funny how laughter hit different when it wasn't yours being dissected in public. So that's it? She asked, voice smaller now. You're just done? I turned to her and said it flat. Clara, I was done the moment I realized our marriage was just a business where I paid for everything and still couldn't afford peace. She didn't reply. She just stared ahead, lips pressed tight, eyes shimmering but defiant. The light turned green, and we drove on in silence again. But this time, the silence felt like closure, not war. My phone buzzed again, Raymond, persistent as ever. I ignored it. Not because I didn't want to answer, but because I didn't need to. I knew how this would play out. I'd seen it before. She'd threaten lawyers, I'd stay calm. And somewhere between her fury and my patience, the truth would do all the talking. You'll regret this, she said again, almost whispering it. Maybe, I said, but I'll be regretting it from the comfort of my 85%. Her head whipped toward me. 85. I smiled. You didn't read the fine print, did you? The look on her face was worth every awkward dinner, every backhanded comment, every my friends think you're boring. She turned pale, really pale, like she'd just realized the Titanic didn't come with enough lifeboats. You tricked me. No, I said. I just prepared for the version of you I hoped wouldn't show up. We pulled into the driveway, headlights washing over the house we'd once called our dream home. The irony wasn't lost on me. The dream had expired. Now it was just real estate. She didn't move when I parked. Just sat there, staring at the house like it was already slipping through her fingers. I can't believe you'd do this to me, she whispered. I turned to her. Clara, you did this to yourself. You just didn't think I'd be the one laughing at the end. I stepped out, shut the door, and for the first time in years, the night air felt honest. No more fake smiles. No more pretending. Just me, the stars, and the sound of her muffled sobs behind tinted glass. Inside, I poured myself a glass of whiskey, not out of celebration, but ritual. Divorce is just detox with paperwork. I stood by the window, watching her still sitting in the car, probably realizing that for once, her words couldn't fix it, her tears couldn't manipulate it, and her charm couldn't spin it. That was the beauty of truth. It didn't negotiate. As I took the first sip, I couldn't help but smile. She thought tonight was the end for me. But really, it was the beginning of her education and consequences. You ever get a letter so smug it feels like the envelope's judging you? That was my morning. Bright and early, 8:03 a.m. A courier in a black suit rang my doorbell, holding a white envelope like it contained the 10 Commandments. "Mr. Mason?" he asked. I nodded. "From Green and Mathers," he said, handing it over like he was delivering karma. I swear, he even smirked before walking away. I opened it at the kitchen counter, coffee in one hand, curiosity in the other, and there it was, the legal equivalent of a middle finger. Clara's divorce petition, printed on heavy stock paper, embossed, and scented with entitlement. They wanted half of everything, lifelong alimony, and the house. Not a house. My house. The one I bought, renovated, and paid for while she focused on personal growth, which mostly meant Pilates and pretending to run a lifestyle blog that generated exactly zero revenue. I stared at the paper, then at my coffee. "You're going to need more caffeine for this," I told myself. So, I made another cup, sat down, and laughed. Not the bitter kind of laugh. The genuine, holy crap, she's really doing this laugh. Then I forwarded the entire thing to my lawyer, Raymond Holt. A man so legally lethal, he could draft a cease and desist in his sleep. Raymond wasn't just a lawyer. He was a weapon in a tailored suit. His emails didn't have signatures. They had outcomes. Within 5 minutes, he replied, "Received. Don't respond. We'll handle this with precision." Translation: he was already sharpening his fountain pen like a scalpel. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. "Clara." The text read, "That prenup thing isn't real, right?" "Oh, Clara. Sweet summer child." I didn't reply. I just took a screenshot, sent it to Raymond, and blocked her number faster than she blocked accountability. 2 seconds later, Raymond called. "She texted?" he asked, his voice smooth, steady, caffeinated by pure logic. "Yep." "Good. Don't engage. Every word she sends is a donation to your case." "She's gonna hate you," I said. "I specialize in that emotion," he replied. "See, that's the beauty of having a shark on your side. You don't need to fight. You just need to feed him documentation." By noon, Raymond had already replied to Green and Mathers with a counter so surgical it could have been filed with a scalpel. His email began with, "Per the terms of the prenuptial agreement signed and notarized on April 12, 2017, and ended with a polite but firm "No, that's it." No long arguments, no drama, just no. Raymond believed in the art of legal minimalism. Every sentence he wrote sounded like it came with a threat in italics. Meanwhile, I sat in my living room watching the sunlight hit the same marble floor Clara once insisted we absolutely needed for the aesthetic. It was funny. All that marble, all that gloss, and yet no reflection could show me the man I used to be with her. The guy who worked late, paid bills, bought her gifts, and thought happy wife, happy life was a universal truth. Turns out, it's more of a marketing slogan. Around 1 p.m., my neighbor, bless his nosy heart, saw me reading through the papers and came over. "Everything all right, man?" he asked, leaning on the fence like we were in a 90s sitcom. "Divorce papers," I said. "Aw, crap. You okay?" "Better than she's about to be," I said, sipping my coffee. He whistled. "You think she'll go easy?" I laughed. "Her definition of easy involves high heels and a courtroom meltdown." Raymond emailed again that afternoon with an update. "Expect escalation. Green and Mathers are aggressive but unimaginative. We'll crush them by Thursday." You gotta love a man with confidence like that. He even attached a draft of our response letter, and reading it was like watching verbal fencing. "My client has fully complied with all marital and financial obligations." Boom. "Your client's demands are inconsistent with established contract law." Slam dunk. "We suggest your client familiarize herself with the terms she voluntarily agreed to." Fatality. But then, right as I started feeling invincible, Clara struck again, not through lawyers this time, but through theatrics. She posted on Instagram a black and white photo of her wine glass with the caption, "Sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself." The comment section lit up like a pity party. "Stay strong, queen. You deserve better. He never appreciated you." And my personal favorite, "Men can't handle a powerful woman." Oh, I can handle one. What I can't handle is delusion in a designer dress. I didn't respond publicly. I'm not that guy, but I did send the post to Raymond. His reply? "Keep them coming. Screenshots are forever." See, he wasn't just building a case. He was crafting an art exhibit called Self-Sabotage by Clara. That evening, I decided to unwind with some takeout. Thai food, my comfort meal. Pad Thai and poetic justice. I sat on the couch, watching TV, when my phone dinged again. An email from Green and Mathers. Our client requests mediation to avoid unnecessary conflict. Translation: she just realized that prenup is real. Raymond called immediately, chuckling. They blinked first, he said. I told you, their aggression is decorative. What's next? I asked. We let them talk themselves into a corner. Then we closed the door. It's weird. You'd think a divorce would feel like defeat. But that night, I didn't feel broken. I felt free. Like someone had lifted a 2-year fog of gaslighting and emotional clutter off my shoulders. Every insult she'd ever disguised as a joke, every argument she'd spun to make me feel guilty, all of it faded into background noise. The only thing louder was peace. By midnight, Raymond sent one last email. She's cornered. Don't respond to anything. Sleep well. I laughed out loud. Sleep well, he said, as if I hadn't slept properly in months. I poured another drink, looked out the window at the quiet street, and thought about how strange it was that something ending could feel so much like starting over. I'll admit, part of me missed the early days, before the fights, before the lawyers, back when we were just two idiots with matching coffee mugs and bad taste in movies. But then I remembered her standing at that gala, announcing to the world she was finally free of me. And I thought, you wanted freedom, Clara. Here it is, with postage. The next morning, Raymond texted, check your email. I opened it to find a document titled Mason versus Clara, Preliminary Defense Summary. It was beautiful. 10 pages of pure, clean logic, cross-referenced with receipts, statements, and the prenup. It was like reading the screenplay to my comeback story. The final line? All claims against my client are without merit. I printed it out, placed it neatly beside the original envelope from Green and Mathers, and smiled. 2 pieces of paper, one a threat, the other a shield. And in between them, a man who finally remembered who he was. I didn't need to yell, didn't need revenge. The law was poetic enough. Clara had filed for war. What she didn't realize was that I'd already won the peace. If Chaos had a fan club, my ex-wife's family would have been the founding members. It started 3 days after the legal fireworks began. I was halfway through my morning coffee when my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in months. Margaret Lane, aka Clara's mother, aka the self-proclaimed queen of emotional blackmail. The woman had the tone of a telemarketer who sold guilt instead of insurance. I debated letting it ring, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered. Margaret, I said, sounding like a man who regretted every choice that led to this call. How could you do this to my daughter? She barked before I even said hello. She made your house a home. Margaret, I said calmly. It was already a home. She just added candles and debt. There was a pause. I swear I could hear her clutching her pearls through the phone. You ungrateful man. Clara gave you her best years. Her best years. I said. She spent half of them taking selfies in good lighting. That didn't go over well. She launched into a dramatic monologue about loyalty, family, and how Clara sacrificed so much. I let her rant for a full minute while I ate toast. Margaret, I finally said, if this is about money, tell her she can keep the throw pillows. I'm feeling generous. Click. She hung up so hard the call log probably filed for workers' comp. But that was only the first wave of the entitled brigade. A few hours later, I made the rookie mistake of going to the grocery store, the one Clara and I used to shop at because she liked the vibe. There's no vibe at a grocery store, Margaret. There's produce and regret. Anyway, I'm standing there comparing oat milk brands like a responsible adult when I hear the high-pitched voice of Tiffany. Clara's best friend, maid of honor, and part-time gossip columnist for everyone's business but her own. Well, if it isn't Mr. Iceheart himself, she said, blocking my cart like a mall cop. Tiffany, I greeted, giving her the smile reserved for small children and telemarketers. She's heartbroken, Mason, Tiffany said, crossing her arms dramatically. She still loves you. Really, I said, tossing a box of cereal into my cart. Then tell her to stop sending her love through legal channels. Tiffany gasped like I'd just confessed to arson. You know, she was crying last night, she said, hand to her chest. That's funny, I said, because she laughed pretty hard when she declared herself free at a charity gala. You misunderstood her, she said, indignant. She was joking. Then maybe she should consider a new career in stand-up, I replied. She's clearly a natural at public humiliation. Tiffany made a face that said she wanted to throw her overpriced organic coffee at me. You've changed, she snapped. No, Tiffany, I said. I've just stopped paying emotional rent to people who never paid a dime back. And with that, I wheeled my cart past her and left her standing in the frozen food aisle, no doubt rehearsing how she'd twist the story later for her friends. By evening, the rumor mill had kicked into full gear. Apparently, according to social media, I was cold-hearted, unfeeling, and refused to fight for my marriage. Yeah, because nothing screams healthy relationship like fighting to stay with someone who filed a legal hit job for half your stuff. Even my barber asked, "Bro, you really dumped her like that?" I just said, "No, bro, she dumped herself. I'm just the poor guy she tripped over on the way out." Then came the text from Clara's cousin, Melinda, the family's unofficial PR agent. "Hey Mason," she wrote. "Just checking in. Hope we can all stay civil." Civil? This woman once tried to Venmo request me for gas money after crashing my car. "Of course, Melinda," I replied. "Civility's my middle name." She read that as an invitation to unleash a paragraph-long sermon about how family ties are forever and Clara's going through a lot. I answered, "So am I. My coffee machine's been quieter since she left." No reply. Shocker. By day 3, I started calling it Operation Victim Tour 2024. Everywhere Clara went, she had a new audience. Her yoga group? He was emotionally unavailable. Her hairstylist? He was controlling. Her dentist? He never smiled anymore. Well, yeah, Clara. Hard to smile when you're funding someone else's midlife crisis before 40. My friends sent me screenshots of her Facebook posts, black and white selfies, captions like, "Sometimes strength is letting go," and a flood of comments from her emotional support squad. It was almost impressive. She managed to turn our divorce into a brand campaign. Meanwhile, I was too busy enjoying something radical. Peace. No passive-aggressive texts. No, babe, can you Venmo me for this? Number 20-minute arguments about whether quinoa counts as dinner. Just quiet. And you know what I discovered? Freedom has a sound. It's silence mixed with the click of a whiskey glass on a wooden table. Still, the entertainment value of watching her inner circle crumble was unbeatable. A week later, I ran into her brother, Paul, at the gym. Paul's a good guy, dumb as a rock, but good-hearted. He cornered me near the weights and said, "Hey man, heard things got rough." I nodded. Rough's one word for it. "She's real upset," he said, wiping sweat off his forehead. "She thought you'd fight for her." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the dumbbells. "Paul, she declared war with lawyers. That's not fighting for love. That's corporate restructuring." "Still," he said, scratching his head, "you could talk to her, maybe?" "Tell you what," I said, "when she returns my peace of mind and 3 years of tax stress, I'll consider it." He looked confused. "Tax stress? Ask your sister how many business expenses were handbags." He blinked. "Oh, conversation over." Later that night, I got another call, this time from Margaret again. I almost didn't pick up, but Raymond, my lawyer, said, "Record everything." So I answered. "You should be ashamed," she started. "Do you know how this is affecting her reputation?" "Margaret," I said. "She announced her freedom to 100 people and a jazz band. I think the reputation ship has sailed. You always were arrogant. And you always were wrong. But here we are." She huffed. "Mark my words, you'll regret this." "Women talk, Mason. No one will ever trust you again." "That's fine," I said. "I'm not looking for investors, just peace." She muttered something about prayer and slammed the phone down. After that, I called Raymond just to share the comedy. "She's mobilizing her fan club," I said. "Good," he replied. "Every word they say outside of court is just more noise. We don't deal in noise. We deal in paper." "You really need a t-shirt that says that," I told him. He chuckled. "I'll wear it to mediation." By the weekend, the circus had gone from tragic to hilarious. Clara's cousin posted, "Sometimes people show their true colors. Stay strong, sis," followed by a bunch of emojis. I resisted the urge to comment. Funny, because her true color last night was panic beige. Instead, I just screenshotted it for Raymond. "Keep stacking evidence," he texted. "Their drama's doing half my job." On Sunday, I finally decided to take a drive. No destination, just peace and open road. I rolled the windows down, let the wind drown out the nonsense. and thought about how wild it was that one woman's ego could mobilize an entire support army, and yet not one of them asked the most obvious question. What did she do? That's the funny thing about drama. It's allergic to introspection. By the time I got home, I'd made peace with the whole entitled brigade. Let them talk. Let them post. Let them host pity brunches and say, he's not who I thought he was. They were right, though. I wasn't. I'd grown up. I'd stopped apologizing for not being the villain in their fantasy. The rumor mill could keep spinning. I was too busy drafting my happily ever after with a lawyer on retainer and a bottle of whiskey labeled closure. Raymond Holt wasn't just a lawyer. He was a legal war machine in Italian leather shoes. The man could quote civil code like it was poetry and make judges question their own rulings. When I first met him, he introduced himself by saying, "My hourly rate is terrifying, but my results are biblical." I thought he was joking. I was wrong. He was the reason I slept at night knowing Clara could throw tantrums, but not lawsuits that stuck. Every time her legal team sent over a demand letter, Raymond responded with the kind of calm precision that made even their printers sweat. One day they asked for 40% of my assets. His reply, "We reiterate the binding terms of the prenuptial agreement." Translation, nope. The next week, they demanded alimony. Raymond wrote back, "My client suggests your client apply for a job." That man weaponized politeness. I'd visit his office once a week for updates, or as he called it, war briefings. It was a minimalist space, all glass and steel, like a Bond villain's Airbnb. He'd sit behind his desk, tapping a Montblanc pen against a stack of folders labeled Green and Mathers, Errors in Judgment. "Mason," he said one Tuesday, "your ex-wife's legal team just filed an amendment. They're now asking for the Bentley." I raised a brow. The Bentley she never drove? The one she said made her look like a trophy wife, yes. "Oh, that one," I said, sipping my coffee. "They can have it. It's leased under the company anyway." Raymond smirked. "Beautiful. That's going to ruin their momentum. You're weaponizing detachment, my favorite tactic." That's the thing about Raymond. He didn't just play the game. He rearranged the board while smiling. Meanwhile, I'd started boxing up Clara's stuff, her clothes, handbags, and approximately 47 scented candles that all smelled like confused forest. Each item went into a box labeled "Not My Problem." The kitchen counter looked like a clearance aisle at a luxury store for the emotionally unstable. I sent a photo of the pile to my buddy Nathan, who texted back, "Looks like Bath and Body Works threw up in your house." I laughed for the first time in days. Raymond called that emotional closure. I called it spring cleaning with spite. A few days later, I got an email from Green and Mathers requesting a meeting to discuss mutual resolution. Raymond read it and chuckled. "They've realized she's losing," he said. "Now they'll pretend to be reasonable." "Should I go?" I asked. "Absolutely not," he replied. "You're the calm client. Let me be the storm." When the meeting happened, Raymond called me afterward with a tone that could only be described as victorious caffeine. "They folded like cheap origami," he said. "They offered 25% and no alimony. And I told them no. We're holding the line at 15%. It's in the contract." "So they're mad." "Mad?" he said, almost laughing. "They're Googling alternative careers." While Raymond was slaying legal dragons, Clara was apparently holding her own pity parade online. I got screenshots from friends. Her Instagram stories were all dramatic quotes about betrayal and toxic men. One had a sunset photo with the caption, "He broke me, but I'll rebuild." Funny how she was always the architect of her own chaos. Raymond saw the posts and said, "Perfect. Keep them." Public perception doesn't win cases, but it sure does flavor the judge's sympathy. The man treated Instagram like evidence. One Friday, I dropped by his office to sign some final documents. He poured us both coffee from a French press that probably cost more than my TV. "Mason," he said, leaning back in his chair, "you're officially weeks away from freedom. How does it feel?" I thought for a moment. "Like taking off shoes that were one size too small." He laughed. "Excellent metaphor. I might use that in closing arguments." "Please don't," I said, "unless you're also quoting Shakespeare." "I already am," he said. "All's well that ends legally sound." That afternoon, Clara tried one last power move. She sent me an email, not from her, but through her lawyer, saying she wanted to revisit the emotional contributions to the marriage. I nearly spit out my drink. Emotional contributions? What was that worth on the open market? Half a compliment and a burnt casserole. I forwarded it to Raymond with one word, seriously? His reply, they're flailing. Let them drown. He wasn't kidding. A week later, Green and Mathers filed to withdraw as her representation. Apparently, Clara had refused to pay their fees because justice shouldn't cost this much. That's when I realized karma wasn't just poetic, it was practical. Raymond didn't even gloat. He just said, it's always the ones who think emotions are currency. With her fancy lawyers gone, Clara tried reaching out directly. One night, my phone buzzed at 11:42 p.m. with a text. Maybe we can talk things through? I stared at it for a long moment, then did what any emotionally evolved adult would do. I forwarded it to Raymond. He responded immediately, block her. She's fishing for leverage. So I blocked her. Again. Over the next few days, I started realizing something strange. I was actually having fun. The stress was gone. I'd wake up early, go for a run, and not have to worry about whether my Spotify playlist offended her delicate morning mood. My kitchen stayed clean. My bills stayed paid. My sanity stayed intact. It was almost boring, but in the best possible way. I remember telling Raymond, this feels too easy. He smiled and said, that's because you hired me. The final court hearing was coming up, and he was in full predator mode. He prepped me like I was going on Shark Tank. Don't talk unless spoken to. Look confident. Don't smile unless it's smug. Smug? I asked. Judges respect control. Smug is controlled confidence, he said. The man was practically a philosopher. When the day finally came, Raymond walked into court like he owned the building. He didn't even carry a briefcase, just an iPad and a smirk. Clara sat across the aisle, looking like a tragic perfume ad. Her new lawyer, some bargain bin hire, shuffled papers nervously. When the judge asked for final remarks, Raymond stood and said, Your Honor, my client seeks only what is legally his, nothing more. The rest is emotional theater. Mic drop. Even the stenographer looked impressed. By the time it was over, Clara's expression said everything. The shock of losing mixed with disbelief that her charm hadn't worked. I didn't even need to speak. Raymond had already done it for me. As we walked out, he handed me a copy of the final settlement draft and said, Congratulations, Mr. Mason. You're officially free of the circus. I looked at him and grinned. Raymond, you're a shark. He shrugged modestly. I prefer apex predator. Then he straightened his tie and said, Now go home and enjoy your 85%. You've earned it. Walking out of that courthouse felt like leaving a bad TV show mid-season. No finale, no tears, just sweet relief and better writing ahead. And as I drove home, windows down, I whispered to myself with a laugh. To Raymond, the only man who could turn my divorce into a masterclass in winning quietly. You ever reach that stage in a breakup where the other person realizes logic isn't working, so they start throwing mud hoping something sticks? Yeah. Welcome to my ex-wife's masterclass in pettiness. Clara had moved from heartbreak to full-blown war crime energy, and I was her chosen battlefield. It started on a Tuesday night. Because apparently, chaos has a schedule. I was watching a documentary about whales. Don't judge, they're majestic, when there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find 2 police officers standing there. Mr. Mason? One asked. That depends, I said. Am I being recruited or arrested? He didn't laugh. Tough crowd. We received a call about a possible domestic disturbance. I blinked. Domestic what now? Your wife, Clara Lane, filed a report claiming there was yelling and possible violence at this address. I actually laughed. Like full body, clutch your stomach laughed. Officer, I said, the only thing being beaten here is her case. The taller cop smirked a little. Mind if we take a look around? Sure, I said, stepping aside. Watch your step. Though, peace and quiet everywhere. They looked through my spotless living room, my kitchen, even peeked in my home office where my laptop sat open to a spreadsheet titled Financial Freedom. When they found nothing, one of them said, You two going through a divorce? Yeah, I said, and apparently she's auditioning for the role of Victim of the Year. They nodded, apologized for the inconvenience, and left. I closed the door, texted Raymond, and within seconds he replied, Perfect. False report. That'll play nicely in court. Document everything. The next morning, I thought it was over. Silly me. I got to work and found an email waiting from HR. Subject line, Urgent, concerning behavior report. For half a second, My heart stopped. Then I opened it. Anonymous complaint. Mason has been emotionally unstable since his divorce and may be unfit for leadership. I nearly choked on my coffee. HR called me in, serious as a funeral. Mason, said Karen, because of course her name was Karen. We received a concerning report. I leaned back in my chair. Let me guess, anonymous and oddly detailed? She nodded. Any idea who might have filed it? Oh, I have a hunch, I said. Does the complaint come with glitter and victim energy? Karen blinked. Excuse me. Never mind, I said. Long story short, I'm fine. My ex-wife's not. Karen gave a sympathetic smile that said I've seen worse. We just had to check. No disciplinary action. Just hang in there. I walked out of that office with a grin. Clara thought she could get me fired. What she didn't realize is my boss loves me like a tax deduction. I showed him the email, and he laughed so hard he nearly fell off his chair. Mason, he said, the only thing unstable about you is your ex-wife's Wi-Fi signal. That night, I poured a drink, looked out at the city lights, and thought, if she's going to play dirty, she'd better bring soap. Because now, this was chess, not checkers. I wasn't going to stoop to her level. I was going to let her bury herself in paperwork. Raymond called me the next morning. She's escalating, he said, voice cool and amused. Good news is, every stunt she pulls adds another 0 to the moral victory column. How's that work? I asked. Judges love documentation. They hate drama. Keep being boring. Let her set herself on fire. I couldn't help but laugh. That your official legal advice? It's in Latin somewhere, he said. 2 days later, I got another gift from the Department of Petty. A friend texted me. Bro, Clara posted this. Attached was a screenshot of her new Instagram caption. Sometimes narcissists pretend to be calm to hide their guilt. Oh, she was really leaning into her villain origin story. Raymond loved it. Keep them coming, he said. She's building my closing argument for me. Then came the accidental text. At 9:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. Message from Clara. He fell for it. Tiffany. The cops actually showed up. Face with tears of joy followed by, oops, wrong person. I almost felt bad. Almost. I forwarded it to Raymond. He replied within seconds. Holy goldmine. Now, the problem with smart people is they think everyone else is dumb. Clara figured she could outmaneuver me because she was emotional, and emotional people love momentum. The issue? Momentum doesn't beat strategy. I stopped reacting. No calls. No messages. No shade. Just silence. And silence, my friend, is psychological warfare. You could practically hear her unraveling through her posts. You think silence is peace, but it's manipulation. No, Clara. It's peace. You just don't recognize it because it's allergic to drama. A week later, I got a knock at the door again. This time it wasn't the police. It was a courier, same suit as last time, different envelope. You're popular, he said. Tell me about it, I muttered. Inside, a restraining order request. She claimed I'd been harassing her via indirect communication. Raymond laughed so hard over the phone, he actually snorted. Indirect communication, he said. What does that even mean? Apparently, my silence is too loud. Oh, this judge is going to love her, he said. He filed a response immediately, attaching her own text messages and public posts. Within 48 hours, the case was thrown out with a judicial sigh, so strong you could feel it through the PDF. But Clara wasn't done. No, she was just warming up. She tried going for my car next. I got a call from the dealership saying someone tried to access my account, claiming to be my assistant. She said she needed to verify ownership of your vehicle, the rep told me. I laughed. Did she sound desperate and smell like Chardonnay through the phone? That's oddly specific, the guy said, chuckling. We didn't fall for it. I called Raymond. He added attempted fraudulent access to his growing list titled Clara's Self-Destruction Log. By this point, even her friends were backing away. Tiffany stopped posting Stay Strong, Queen, and started posting vague quotes about toxic people learning lessons. You could feel the loyalty leaking. I didn't gloat, though. Okay, maybe a little. But I was mostly fascinated. Watching someone implode with such dedication is like witnessing performance art. Around week 3, Clara tried one last Hail Mary. She showed up at my office. Full glam, crocodile tears, the works. My receptionist called, whispering, "There's a woman downstairs saying it's urgent." I sighed. Is she wearing a dress that looks expensive but emotionally unstable? Yes. That's her. Tell her to email my lawyer. I could hear the receptionist trying not to laugh. 10 minutes later, I got a text from her sister, Rachel, apologizing. I told her not to go, Rachel wrote. She's losing it, Mason. She's already lost it, I replied. Now she's just redecorating the crater. Raymond was ecstatic. She's making my closing arguments write themselves, he said. We're adding this to the harassment documentation. He paused, then added, at this point, she's not fighting you. She's auditioning for a restraining order. By the time Friday rolled around, I was sitting in Raymond's office again, going through the latest updates. You realize, he said, if she keeps this up, you could countersue for defamation. Nah, I said, leaning back. Let her keep talking. I don't need her money. I've got her peace of mind, and she can't buy that back. He grinned. That's savage. Nah, I said again. That's closure. Later that night, I took myself out to dinner, alone, but content. I ordered steak, a glass of whiskey, and enjoyed the rare pleasure of not having anyone critique my meal choices. Halfway through dessert, I got another text from Rachel. She's finally stopped posting, she said. I smiled. Silence, sweet, overdue silence. When I got home, I found one last message waiting in my inbox from Raymond, all her antics documented. Judge already reviewing patterns. Sleep easy, my friend. The dirty tricks department just shut down for good. I turned off my phone, poured myself another drink, and laughed quietly to myself. Because the truth is, Clara never realized she wasn't fighting me. She was fighting her own reflection. And like any good magician's trick, the illusion only worked until the audience stopped clapping. There's a particular sound you never forget, the angry knock of an ex who thinks the law of cause and effect doesn't apply to her. It's like thunder with a side of entitlement. 3 weeks had passed since her last stunt, which, in Clara's world, meant she'd had enough time to recharge her drama batteries. It was a Friday night, and I was finally living my dream. Sweatpants, takeout Chinese, and a crime doc about pyramid schemes. Then, bam, bam, bam. The door nearly jumped off its hinges. I muted the TV and sighed. The kind of sigh only a man who's survived marriage to chaos can produce. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered, setting down my lo mein. I peeked through the peephole, and, oh joy, there she was. Clara, in full designer armor, red heels, and an expression that screamed Oscar nominee for Best Victim. Standing beside her was her sister Rachel, who looked like she regretted every decision that led her to my porch. I opened the door slowly, leaning against the frame like a man halfway between boredom and amusement. Evening, ladies, I said. Did someone lose a GPS signal to reality again? Clara's eyes were wide, wild. You can't do this to me, she screamed before I even got a chance to blink. Rachel winced. Clara, maybe let's not. No, Rachel. Clara snapped. He needs to hear this. Hear what? I asked calmly. How you turned a fair divorce into your own personal Broadway meltdown. You ruined me, she shouted, her voice echoing down the quiet street. I swear I saw my neighbor, old Mr. Henderson, peek through his blinds with his popcorn ready. You'll have nothing left of me, she continued. That's the point, I said, smiling. It's called moving on. That really set her off. She jabbed a manicured finger in my face. You'll regret this, Mason. You think you can just walk away like none of this mattered. I shrugged. I didn't walk away, Clara. I ran, emotionally, legally, and quite successfully, might I add. Rachel groaned softly. Can we just talk like adults, please? We tried that, I said. It ended with your sister sending cops, fake emails, and a restraining order that got laughed out of court. Clara's lip quivered. I did that because you made me crazy. No, I said, lowering my voice. You were crazy. I just finally stopped subscribing. She huffed, tears streaming now, mascara joining the rebellion. I'll have nothing after this, she sobbed dramatically. You'll have 15%, I said. Use it wisely. Maybe buy a mirror and a therapist. Rachel tried to step between us. She's just emotional, Mason. Then she can express that through her attorney, I said, stepping back inside slightly. I'm all booked up for chaos this week. Clara's voice hit that high-pitched frequency reserved for reality TV fights. You heartless bastard. I gave you my best years. You mean the years where I funded your Etsy addiction and watched you find yourself through luxury spa packages? She gasped, like I'd thrown holy water at her demons. You're cruel. No, I said. I'm consistent. The whole time, Rachel looked like she was mentally teleporting to another planet. Clara, please, she said quietly. This isn't helping. You always take his side. Clara barked, spinning on her like an unhinged ballerina. You don't understand. He's destroying me. Sweetheart, I said, leaning on the doorframe. You're doing a great job of that all on your own. She froze, eyes narrowing. You think this is funny? A little, I admitted. Mostly sad, but the comedic timing is impressive. Then she switched tactics, wiping her tears instantly like flipping a light switch. We can fix this, she said suddenly, voice soft, seductive. Classic Clara move. Turn pity into persuasion. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said, stepping closer. You and me, we had something real once. Yeah, I said. And then you filed for half my life like it was a Black Friday sale. I was hurt, she said. You humiliated me. You announced your freedom at a gala. Clara, I said. You made yourself a group project. Rachel sighed. Maybe this isn't the right time. Oh, it's definitely not, I said. It's Friday. I've got lo mein getting cold. Clara ignored her sister, voice trembling again. Please, Mason. I just need to talk. I'm scared. Of what? I asked, genuinely curious. Consequences? She bit her lip, looking down. Of being alone. That one almost got me. Almost. But then I remembered the cops, the fake HR complaint, and the late-night texts about winning. Sympathy left the chat. Then maybe, I said quietly, you should stop treating people like placeholders. For a second, she just stood there, silent. No screaming, no theatrics, just stillness. And for the first time, I saw it, the realization. The moment the hurricane understands the damage it caused. Rachel placed a hand on her shoulder. Come on, she whispered. Let's go. Clara shook her off, turning back to me, voice shaky but defiant. You'll regret this, she said again. I smiled. If I do, I'll bill you for the therapy. She hesitated, tears brimming, then spun around and stormed off down the steps. Rachel lingered. For what it's worth, she said softly, I'm sorry. She's not herself lately. Rachel, I said, this is herself. The rest was marketing. She gave a sad little smile and followed her sister. As soon as the door shut, I exhaled. I didn't realize how tense I'd been until the silence rushed back in. I poured myself a drink and raised it to the empty room. To peace, I muttered. The quiet was addictive. But 5 minutes later, I heard it again, the faint hum of a car engine outside. I looked through the blinds. Clara's car. Still parked. Rachel's too. I shook my head. Oh no, we're not doing sequels. I called Raymond. He answered on the first ring. Tell me she didn't show up, he said. Oh, she did, I said, sipping whiskey. Brought the sister too. It was like a live episode of Real Housewives, Regret Edition. Did you record it? He asked. You know me. I pointed at the security camera blinking red on my porch. Good man, Raymond said. Save the footage. If she does it again, we'll file for harassment. Judges love patterns. You mean I finally get to use her own drama as evidence? Exactly, he said. Let her keep digging. After the call, I watched the car finally pull away. The whole street felt lighter. It's amazing how much energy one person can drain from a space just by existing in it. I cleaned up the spilled soy sauce from my earlier interruption, turned the TV back on, and tried to pick up where I left off in my documentary. But my mind was spinning. Part of me couldn't believe how far she'd fallen. The woman who once lectured me about emotional maturity, now screaming in the driveway like a rejected soap opera star. But another part of me knew this was inevitable. Some people can't handle losing control, especially when the person they underestimated refuses to break. I didn't tell anyone about that night, except Raymond. My friends would have turned it into a comedy roast. Nathan would have said something like, "Bro, you should have charged admission," and he wouldn't have been wrong. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. That door slam wasn't just physical. It was symbolic. For years, Clara had used emotion as her weapon. Tears, guilt, charm. She wielded them all like a professional. But tonight, none of it worked. Tonight, she realized I was bulletproof. The next morning, my phone buzzed. Rachel again. She's embarrassed. She didn't sleep. Just wanted you to know she won't show up again. I texted back, good. Tell her my door's retired from drama. She replied with a simple thumbs up emoji, the international sign for I'm exhausted too. That weekend, Raymond filed a no-contact notice just in case. You don't have to serve it yet, he said. But it's there if she forgets how doors work. The man always had a line ready. I thanked him, hung up, and finally decided to do something normal, mow the lawn. Sounds small, but after months of legal wars, silence, and emotional minefields, pushing that mower felt like therapy. The neighbors waved. Even Mr. Henderson gave me a thumbs up, probably proud of surviving another episode of the live soap opera next door. That night, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I replayed everything in my head. The gala, the court hearings, the chaos, and now this, her meltdown finale. It felt like I'd survived a hurricane, and for the first time, the air was still. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't even feel vengeful. I just felt done. Completely, beautifully, quietly done. A week later, I got an email from Raymond with the subject line, "Closure arrived." Inside was the official court notice, final hearing date set. One step away from freedom. I poured myself a drink to celebrate, raised my glass toward the window, and said, "To Clara, may her next victim read the fine print." Then I laughed, because honestly, I wasn't even bitter. She'd written her own ending. I just let the credits roll. The thing about karma is, she doesn't text you first. She just shows up wearing stilettos and a smug smile, and suddenly everything the other person thought they were winning starts slipping through their manicured fingers. That was Clara's next few weeks, one long, slow-motion collapse, and I didn't even have to lift a finger. It started with a call from Raymond on a Monday morning. "Green and Mathers just reached out," he said, voice calm, amused, like a man reading bedtime stories to a fool. "They're begging for leniency." I nearly dropped my coffee. "Begging?" "As in actual begging." "Their words," he said. "She won't listen. She thinks she can negotiate through tears." I leaned back in my chair, grinning. "That's my girl," I said. "Weaponizing emotion when logic leaves the building." Raymond chuckled. "Well, the judge isn't buying it. And wait till you hear this. Your ex forgot to declare a $60,000 diamond necklace in her asset disclosure." "Oh, you mean the necklace I bought for her mother's birthday that she claimed was a loaner?" "That's the one. We found the receipt." Her credibility just evaporated. For context, Green and Mathers was the legal equivalent of a five-star restaurant. Expensive, impressive, and full of things you regret paying for. So when Raymond said her lawyer was begging, that meant one thing. They were done pretending she was rational. I pictured their office, Green, the senior partner, massaging his temples while his junior associate whispered, "Maybe she should stop emailing the judge directly." I didn't need to see it to know. I'd been married to the storm. I knew the pattern. When Clara felt control slipping, she doubled down on theatrics. She probably showed up to their office in red lipstick and tragedy, talking about standing her ground, while they tried to explain how perjury works. I didn't celebrate, though. Not yet. I'd seen her bounce back before. Clara was like a bad sequel. Nobody asked for it, but somehow it still shows up in theaters. Still, there was a new calm in me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even anxious. I was entertained. Raymond called it detached satisfaction. I called it watching karma Netflix. Every episode just got better. A few days later, my buddy Nathan called me. "Dude, you've seen her Instagram?" I groaned. "Why would I?" "Because she's losing it." Like, full documentary-worthy meltdown. Against my better judgment, I looked. There it was, Clara's new aesthetic. Messy hair, motivational quotes, and captions like, "The hardest battles are fought alone." The comments were all predictable. "Stay strong, queen." "Men are trash." Sending prayers and wine. I laughed. "She's turning heartbreak into a side hustle," I said. Nathan snorted. "You think she'll start a podcast?" "Oh, she will," I said. Episode 1. How to lose 85% of your assets in 10 easy steps. Meanwhile, my life was the calmest it had been in years. My company was thriving, the team was happy, and my mornings didn't start with emotional grenades disguised as breakfast conversations. I could actually eat in peace without hearing, "Do you think I'm dramatic?" Answer: yes, always yes. I'd started hitting the gym again, eating better, even sleeping better. Funny how silence can be the most luxurious sound in the world once you've lived with someone who used yelling as cardio. One morning, I was on my third cup of coffee when Raymond called again. "We've got an update," he said, voice buzzing with that particular tone lawyers get when they smell victory. Judge reviewed her filings. He's not impressed. How not impressed? I asked. He literally wrote, and I quote, "This case reflects poor preparation and questionable intent." Ouch, I said. That's legal talk for try again when you have your life together. Exactly, Raymond said. We're pushing to finalize next month. Music to my ears, I said. I'll send you a bottle when it's over. Make it two, he said. Later that day, I got an email from Clara's old firm, the one she left when we first got married because she said she was meant for more creative things. The subject line said, "Reference request for former employee, Clara Lane." I smiled. She was trying to get a job. Good for her, honestly, but also poetic. The woman who once told me, "I'll never need to work again. You're stable enough for both of us," was now trying to charm her way back into corporate life. I didn't sabotage her. I'm not that guy. I replied with a brief, polite note. Competent, articulate, ambitious, prefers independence. I figured that last part would either help or haunt her. Either way, not my problem anymore. Still, I knew Clara. She wasn't built for humility. A job would last 2 weeks tops before she decided her manager didn't respect her aura. I didn't need revenge. Her personality handled that department. Around that time, her mother, Margaret, yes, that Margaret, CEO of Guilt Incorporated, called me again. "Mason," she started, "this is Margaret. I'm just calling to say you've humiliated our family." "Which part?" I asked. "The part where your daughter lied to a judge, or the part where I stopped funding her candle addiction?" "You think this is funny?" she snapped. "She's been crying for days." "So have I," I said. Mine just happened to be tears of laughter. Click. She hung up again. That woman could hang up faster than a telemarketer during a power outage. Raymond told me not to engage with her anymore. "Margaret is emotional residue," he said. "Ignore her." So I did, and something magical happened. The call stopped. For the first time in months, my phone wasn't a panic device. It was quiet, peaceful. Then, just when I thought we'd hit peak serenity, Karma decided to deliver dessert. Raymond forwarded me an email chain between Green and Mathers and Clara. Apparently, she'd fired them mid-case. Claimed they were uninspired and didn't fight hard enough. Which is hilarious considering they'd practically written her closing arguments for her. Raymond's note attached said, "She's self-representing now." I stared at the screen. "She's what?" I called him. "Please tell me you're joking." "I wish," he said, chuckling. "She filed her own motion. It's handwritten. In pink ink." "You're lying." "I'm not." She even drew a sad face in the margin. I was silent for a full 10 seconds, trying to decide whether to laugh or light a candle for the judge's sanity. "So she's suing me with arts and crafts." "Basically," he said, "I've seen toddlers write stronger rebuttals." At that point, I couldn't even be mad. It was performance art. I pictured her at home, hair tied up, surrounded by scented candles and half-empty wine glasses, scribbling. He emotionally abandoned me, while dramatic music played in the background. If self-sabotage had a Pinterest board, this was it. 2 weeks later, her defense got tossed out. The judge's note said, "This submission does not meet the criteria of a formal motion." Raymond sent it to me with one line. Case closed, almost literally. By then, the gossip had finally died down. The same people who'd commented "Stay strong, Queen," had gone quiet. Tiffany, her old friend, was now engaged to someone new and probably too busy taking engagement selfies to maintain her loyalty membership in the Clara support group. Even her mom stopped calling. It's funny how people disappear when your chaos stops being entertaining. One Friday, I ran into Rachel, her sister, at a coffee shop. She looked tired but kind. "She's moving soon," she said, sitting across from me. "Some small condo near her work." "Good for her," I said, genuinely meaning it. "Maybe fresh air will do her good." Rachel sighed. "She's humbled, I think." "For real this time." "Humbled," I said. "So we're in the apology prequel phase?" Rachel gave me a faint smile. "Maybe." She wanted me to tell you she's sorry. I raised an eyebrow. Sorry like sorry, or sorry like, "Please forget the restraining order and let's talk." "The first one," she said softly. I think she finally realized what she lost. I nodded, staring into my coffee. "Yeah," I said quietly. So did I. When I got home that evening, I found an envelope in my mailbox. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a note. "You were right. I ruined everything. I just didn't think you'd really walk away." I stared at it for a long minute. It wasn't angry. It wasn't manipulative. It was just sad. For the first time, I didn't feel satisfaction, just finality. Because when someone finally admits the truth, the story ends. I didn't reply. What could I say? I told you so wouldn't fix anything. Besides, silence had worked perfectly so far. I folded the letter, slipped it back in the envelope, and tucked it into a drawer, not because I wanted to keep it, but because it felt like a gravestone for that part of my life. The following Monday, Raymond called one last time. "Mason," he said, "congratulations. It's official. Divorce finalized. You're free." I didn't cheer or celebrate. I just exhaled. "You did good work, Raymond." "You did better," he said. "You stayed calm." I laughed. "I had no choice. You scared me more than she did." He chuckled. "That's how I keep my clients alive." When I hung up, I stood by the window for a while, watching the city. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. Cliché, maybe, but fitting. It was over. The legal circus, the emotional warfare, the chaos, all of it. Just like that, the noise was gone. I turned on some music, old jazz, her least favorite genre, and poured a drink. "To peace," I said, clinking my glass against the invisible ghosts of my past. And just before bed, I checked my phone one last time. No calls, no emails, no drama, just a quiet home, a life rebuilt, and the faint smell of victory mixed with takeout. Freedom, as it turned out, didn't come with confetti. It came with stillness. And damn, it was beautiful. The first morning after the divorce papers were officially stamped and sealed, I woke up before my alarm. No shouting, no phone buzzing with emotional warfare, no dramatic sighs from the bathroom about how love dies slowly. Just the sound of my coffee machine doing God's work. The smell hit first, dark roast, victory, and something else that almost felt like peace. I stood in my kitchen barefoot, staring out the window like a man in a commercial for antidepressants. Except this time the smile was real. The sunlight came through the blinds, hitting the marble countertop she once said was too cold for family photos. Turns out, peace has better interior design taste. My phone was silent, which used to be suspicious. Now it was sacred. I sat at the table with my mug, took a long sip, and thought about how everything had changed. A few months ago, I was losing sleep over depositions and texts from my ex's lawyer demanding I acknowledge her emotional contributions. Now I was free, officially, legally, beautifully free. And the best part? I didn't even have to fight dirty. Karma did all the heavy lifting while I drank water and minded my business. Somewhere out there, Clara was posting another filtered selfie captioned, "New beginnings cherry blossom sparkles," and I couldn't even be mad. Let her have her hashtags. I had peace. Around 9 a.m., Raymond called. The man didn't even say hello properly anymore. He just opened with, "How does it feel to own 85% of everything and 100% of your sanity?" I laughed. "Feels like a sale I didn't know I wanted until it cleared." "I told you," he said. "The law always wins when the paperwork's smart and the lawyer's smarter." "Don't flatter yourself too much, Raymond," I said. "You might start charging me for compliments." "Too late," he said. "You'll see that line item next invoice." "You're unbelievable." "I'm undefeated," he corrected, and I could practically hear him smiling through the phone. We chatted for a few minutes about loose ends, final statements, property transfers, all that legal confetti. Then, before hanging up, he said something I didn't expect. "You know, Mason, not everyone gets to leave this kind of mess without losing themselves. Be proud you did." That one stuck with me. For all the sarcasm and bravado, Raymond wasn't wrong. Divorce doesn't just split assets. It splits who you are. You either shrink or evolve. And I wasn't about to shrink for anyone. I spent the next few days reclaiming little parts of my life I'd forgotten. Simple things. My playlist didn't have to skip sad breakup songs. My fridge didn't contain diet yogurt that expired emotionally before it did physically. And best of all, my evenings were quiet. No, can we talk? Followed by a 45-minute monologue about how my tone in a text message was detached. Detachment had become my superpower, actually. That and sarcasm, the two cornerstones of male survival. On Friday, I met up with Nathan at our favorite bar, a small whiskey place downtown that smelled like oak, stories, and other men's bad decisions. He was already at the counter when I walked in, grinning like he'd been waiting for this chapter of my life to finish just so he could gloat. "To freedom," he said, handing me a glass. "To legally enforced peace," I said, clinking it against his. So how's she holding up, he asked. You really want the update? I asked, laughing. Always, he said, leaning in like a kid hearing ghost stories. Well, I said, last I heard, she's moved into a condo downtown. Something small but modern. Probably posting about how independence smells like eucalyptus and regret. Nathan burst out laughing. You're savage. No, I said, sipping my drink. I'm healed. We talked about everything except her after that. Sports, work, plans. It was normal. That was the weirdest part. It was just normal. No tension, no emotional hangover. Just two guys talking about life without a side order of chaos. Around midnight, I went home, kicked off my shoes, and realized something I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't walking on eggshells anymore. My apartment wasn't spotless out of fear of criticism. My silence wasn't weaponized. My peace wasn't fragile. It was just mine. The next morning, I woke up early again. No hangover, no regrets. I brewed coffee, opened the window, and just breathed. The city was alive, but not intrusive. Cars in the distance, birds doing whatever birds do, and me, a man finally untangled from the circus. I sat on the balcony, sipping my coffee, scrolling through emails until I stumbled on one from Clara's mom. Subject line, a mother's appeal. I almost spit my coffee. Of course, she couldn't resist a final performance. The message was short. Mason, she's hurt and humiliated. I hope you can find it in your heart to give her a little more for dignity's sake. I laughed so hard I had to put the mug down. Then I replied with one line. Dignity isn't a financial asset, Margaret. She'll have to earn that one. Sent. Deleted. Blocked. And that was it, the last thread. The final tug of guilt that once worked on me like magic, now powerless. You could almost hear karma humming in the background like a theme song. Because here's the thing about dignity, it's like credit. Once you burn it, no one's extending another line. I spent that afternoon organizing my home office, something I'd been putting off since the start of the chaos. I found an old folder labeled Life Plans. Inside were notes, business ideas, and sketches of an app I'd once dreamed of building before my marriage turned into a full-time job. For the first time in a long while, I felt that spark again. The creative itch, the ambition that had gotten buried under Clara's constant, "Do you really think that'll work?" I reopened my laptop, started sketching out ideas, and within hours I was lost in the zone again. It felt good, clean, productive, like a part of me had been sitting in a dark room waiting for someone to turn the lights back on. That night, while I was ordering takeout, I got a text from an unknown number. I almost didn't check it, but curiosity's a hell of a drug. It read, "I hope you're happy." No name, no punctuation, just those 4 words. I didn't need to guess. The ghost of chaos had returned. I didn't reply, of course. I just stared at it, smiled faintly, and deleted it. Happiness isn't about winning anymore. It's about peace, and you can't explain peace to someone who profits from noise. A few weeks passed, and the world settled into a rhythm I didn't realize I missed. Work was smooth. My company started pulling in new clients. Raymond introduced me to a financial consultant who helped restructure my assets, and for the first time, I wasn't worried about anyone siphoning my future for creative ventures. I even started jogging again, something I hadn't done since Clara told me. Running's just another form of avoidance. Turns out, she was right. It's avoiding bad company, and my lungs loved it. Then came the moment that sealed everything. I was at my usual cafe one morning, the kind with mismatched furniture and baristas who looked like they were born on Pinterest. I was halfway through my coffee when I saw her, Clara, across the street. She looked human, not glamorous, not glowing, just normal. Hair tied back, dark circles under her eyes, carrying a grocery bag and what I assumed was humility. She didn't see me, and I didn't call out. I just watched. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger, pity, or pride. I just felt distance. The kind that isn't physical, it's emotional altitude. We were two people who'd shared a lifetime of drama and now existed in completely different climates. I finished my coffee, left a tip, and walked away without looking back. Closure doesn't need applause. It just needs quiet steps forward. Later that day, I called Raymond just to check in, mostly out of habit. "How's retirement from chaos?" he asked. "Peaceful," I said. "Almost suspiciously so." "That's the adjustment period," he said. "You'll start to crave it soon." "Too late," I said. "I already do." He laughed. Good. Stay boring. Boring wins court cases and life. The next weekend, Nathan convinced me to join him on a small road trip, just a few hours out of the city, hiking, camping, all that finding yourself nonsense. But you know what? It worked. Sitting by a campfire, stars overhead, I realized I wasn't angry at Clara anymore. I wasn't even thinking about her most of the time. She was just a chapter, one I'd finished reading and shelved permanently. The memories didn't sting anymore. They were just stories. And if there's one thing I learned through all of it, it's that revenge is overrated. Peace is quieter, but it lasts longer. By the time I got back home Sunday night, I decided something. I was done living in reaction to her. No more letting the past take up rent in my head. I wanted new stories, new people, new laughter that didn't come with a price tag or a legal clause. So I started saying yes again, to things, to life, to possibilities. When a coworker invited me to a charity dinner, I said yes. When a friend asked if I'd join his startup project, I said yes. When Raymond asked if I wanted to help his nephew build a small app prototype for legal contracts, I said yes. Because saying no had kept me safe, but saying yes was what made me feel alive again. A month after the divorce, I realized I hadn't once checked her social media, not out of discipline, but because I genuinely didn't care. That's when you know healing isn't a performance, it's real. You stop watching the scoreboard because you're too busy playing your own game. I started sleeping better, eating better, laughing more. Freedom had become my new normal, and honestly, it looked damn good on me. One morning, as I poured coffee and leaned on the balcony, the sunrise painted everything gold again, just like that first morning of peace. I thought about the road it took to get here, the laughter in the ballroom, the silence in the car, the legal wars, the doorstep drama, the unraveling, and now this. Coffee, sunlight, calm. Karma wasn't loud when it arrived. It whispered, "You're good now." And I believed it. It's funny how endings rarely look the way you imagine. You picture fireworks, a grand speech, or some cinematic moment where you walk off into the sunset with slow-motion confidence. In reality, the finale of my marriage came with a cup of coffee, an unread text, and the kind of quiet you could build a new life on. 6 months had passed since the legal circus packed up and left town, and I was finally living like a man who didn't flinch every time his phone buzzed. My mornings were simple: coffee, gym, work, peace. The Holy Trinity. I'd learned to enjoy boring, because boring meant stable, and stable meant no one was trying to emotionally sue me before breakfast. The day the final divorce check cleared into my account, I stood there looking at the notification and thought, damn, this is what closure looks like. Not bad. The court had officially ruled in my favor. 85% of all marital assets. The house, the car, the accounts, the company shares. Clara got her 15% and a luxury condo somewhere downtown, probably filled with scented candles and selective memory. Raymond had called me that morning with his usual dry enthusiasm. "Congratulations, Mason. You are now legally free to make bad decisions without my supervision." "I thought that's what I was paying you for," I joked. "You were," he said, "but freedom comes with responsibility and a new hourly rate. You ever stop billing people for jokes?" "Not in this economy." I could hear papers shuffling on his end. "One last thing," he said. "The judge's note complimented your composure throughout." He said, and I quote, "Mr. Mason displayed remarkable restraint." Is that legalese for he didn't punch anyone? Essentially, yes. It's rare. Wear it like a badge. "I'll get it framed," I said. He laughed. "You earned it, my friend. Most people come out of divorce bitter. You came out wealthier and funnier." "That's my brand," I said. "Revenge, but make it charming." After we hung up, I poured another cup of coffee and sat on the porch, thinking about how different life looked now. The house was quiet, but not in that heavy, suffocating way it used to be. It was a calm silence, the kind that didn't demand attention. I'd redecorated too. Got rid of the pastel nonsense and replaced it with clean lines, dark wood, and furniture that didn't make me feel like I was living in an influencer showroom. Every corner of the house felt like me again. Simple, grounded, and slightly sarcastic. The irony of it all still hit me sometimes. The night Clara thought she'd humiliate me in front of her friends was the same night she started a chain reaction that landed her broke, single, and living off a settlement that probably barely covered her skincare routine. Karma didn't come swinging. It came with a clipboard and perfect timing. She'd laughed that night, remember? Finally free of him, she said. And I'd simply raised my glass and replied, indeed. I didn't realize back then that indeed would become the title of her downfall. That one word aged like a fine legal document. Now, every time I think of that night, I can't help but smile. It's not even out of bitterness, it's amusement. Because there's something deeply satisfying about knowing you didn't have to destroy anyone. You just let them self-destruct. I didn't shout, I didn't argue, I didn't even curse her out. I just watched her play herself like a YouTube tutorial. People say revenge is sweet, but honestly, peace tastes better. It's smoother, goes great with coffee. A few weeks after everything was finalized, I ran into her by accident. It was at a restaurant downtown, one of those places that tries too hard to look casual while charging you $40 for salad. I was there for a business dinner. She was 2 tables over, sitting with what I assumed was a date. I noticed her before she saw me. She looked fine. Not bad, not glowing, just fine. That's the thing about people who live for drama. When the spotlight fades, they become unremarkable. She caught my eye eventually. Her expression froze for half a second, then softened into something between nostalgia and regret. I gave her a polite nod and went back to my meal. Didn't wave, didn't smile, just acknowledgement. Power isn't loud. Sometimes it's just eating your steak while the past watches from across the room wishing it had ordered what you did. When I got home that night, I found myself laughing, not out of cruelty, but out of pure disbelief at how far I'd come. I remembered all those nights she'd yell about how I didn't fight for us, when really, I'd just stopped fighting with her. There's a difference. Fighting for something is teamwork. Fighting with someone is war. She never saw the difference, and I stopped trying to explain it. You can't negotiate peace with someone who profits from chaos. Around that time, I started dating again, not intentionally, just casually. Friends kept setting me up, claiming I needed to get back out there. I wasn't looking for love, but I wasn't allergic to company either. That's when I met Elise. She was an architect, smart, steady, funny in that dry, quiet way that sneaks up on you. We met at a charity event, ironically the same type of gala where my last marriage imploded. Life really has a sense of humor. She wore a navy dress, not too flashy, and spent most of the evening arguing with the bartender about bourbon ratios. I liked her instantly. When she asked what I did for a living, I told her the truth, recovering from poor romantic investments. She laughed, a real laugh, not the performative kind Clara used to do when she wanted attention. I appreciate honesty, she said. It's rare. So is emotional stability, I replied. That's why I'm interviewing for it. We've been seeing each other ever since. Elise didn't ask about Clara, at least not much. She knew the basics: divorce, drama, survival. That was enough. She wasn't interested in the gossip. She was interested in the man who made it through. We built something simple: slow dinners, mutual respect, occasional sarcasm competitions. No games, no emotional checklists. She once said, I like that you don't need to prove you're over her. You just are. And she was right. Healing doesn't announce itself. It just shows up one day wearing peace and smelling like good coffee. One night, we were sitting on my porch. Yes, the same porch where I toasted to my freedom months ago. She asked, do you ever think about her? I didn't lie. Sometimes, I said. Not in a sad way, though. More like, remembering a movie I once thought was good until I saw the ending. She laughed so hard she nearly spilled her wine. That's dark. That's accurate, I said. The truth is, I don't hate Clara. Hate takes effort, and she doesn't deserve any more of that. What I feel is gratitude. Warped gratitude, sure, but gratitude nonetheless. Because her betrayal woke me up. It taught me that peace is a choice and that silence can be the loudest form of revenge. It taught me that the right paperwork can save your sanity, and the right lawyer can become your spirit animal. But mostly, it taught me to never again apologize for outgrowing chaos. A few weeks ago, Clara sent one last email. Subject line: closure. I opened it expecting drama, but it was short, shockingly so. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I thought winning meant taking things from you, but you were right. It means letting go. I hope you're happy. I read it twice. No manipulation, no blame, just words. Maybe she finally found her version of peace too. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because some stories end better with silence. I archived it and moved on. Now my life runs on small rituals. Morning coffee, evening whiskey, weekend hikes with Elise. Work trips that don't feel like escape missions. Sometimes, when I'm sitting in traffic or cooking dinner, a memory will sneak in, her laugh echoing across that ballroom, the way everyone turned to look at her when she toasted freedom. And instead of anger, I smile. Because she was right in a twisted way. She was finally free. So was I? The difference was, mine came with peace and legal backing. The funny part? The night of that gala, I remember thinking her laughter sounded like victory. Now I realize it was the sound of a fall beginning. The universe has impeccable comedic timing. The same woman who mocked me for being too logical lost everything because she couldn't think straight. The same people who cheered her toast now avoid her like she's an expired coupon for bad advice. Meanwhile, I'm here, sitting on my porch, sipping bourbon next to a woman who doesn't confuse drama for depth. If that's not poetic justice, I don't know what is. Sometimes, Elise teases me. You really love your peace, don't you? She says. It's my favorite hobby, I reply. You ever miss the chaos? She asks. I shake my head. No, but I do occasionally check the weather just to make sure it's still raining on her side of the street. When people ask how I handled it all so calmly, I tell them the truth. You can't out-yell a storm. You just build a better house. Mine happens to have great Wi-Fi and a solid lawyer on speed dial. And when they ask if I believe in karma, I tell them yes, but only if you give her time. Karma doesn't rush. She wears heels and shows up late. But when she arrives, it's worth the wait. Every so often, I'll scroll through my old photos, the trips, the parties, the moments I once thought defined happiness. They don't hurt anymore. They just remind me how far I've come. The man in those pictures was trying to hold together a story that was already over. The man now? He's not holding anything. He's just living. The last time I thought about Clara, really thought about her, was last week. I was at a wedding, my friend Nathan's, of all people, and during the toast, someone made a joke about love being a partnership of patience. I laughed quietly to myself. Elise nudged me. Inside joke? She asked. You could say that, I said. When the band started playing, I joined her on the dance floor. The last time I'd danced like that, it was with Clara at that cursed gala. Back then, the laughter was fake and the smiles were weapons. Now, it was easy, real light. We laughed so much that the couple next to us asked if we were newlyweds. Elise smiled and said, Not yet. I grinned and thought, yeah, but this time, I'll choose better. As the night ended and we walked to the car, she looked at me and said, You've really come a long way, huh? Yeah, I said, looking up at the stars. And I did it quietly. She laughed. You and your dramatic one-liners. Hey, I said, opening the door for her. They work. When I got home later, I poured one last drink, stepped onto the balcony, and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, maybe Clara was doing the same. Different balcony, same moon, different peace. Maybe she was happy, maybe she wasn't. Either way, it wasn't my story anymore. Mine was here, in this moment, in this quiet victory. I raised my glass to the night and whispered the same word that started it all. Indeed. At my birthday party, my wife arrogantly announced to everyone, Just so you all know, we're in an open relationship now. I calmly replied, As you wish. Then I immediately turned to her attractive single best friend and asked her out for the weekend. Her friend smiled and said, I can do everything better than her. My wife completely froze, her confident smile turning to pure shock. Look, I'm not saying I saw it coming, but when your wife spends 3 months talking about exploring new dimensions of our relationship and breaking free from societal constructs, you start to wonder if she's been binge-watching too much reality TV or if she's actually lost her damn mind. Turns out, it was a little bit of both, and she decided to share her enlightenment with the entire neighborhood on my 35th birthday. Because nothing says happy birthday like public humiliation served with a side of barbecued chicken wings. Cal and Denise had really outdone themselves this year. String lights crisscrossed their backyard like some kind of suburban constellation. The grill was pumping out enough smoke to summon a small fire department. And someone had set up a Bluetooth speaker that was currently murdering a perfectly good Stevie Wonder song with its tinny bass. There were probably 20, maybe 25 people milling around. Co-workers, neighbors, that one guy from my gym who I'd never actually spoken to, but who showed up to every party within a 5-mile radius like some kind of social scavenger. Everyone was doing that thing adults do at parties where they pretend their lives are going great while secretly calculating how early they can leave without seeming rude. I was posted up near the snack table, which I claimed as my emotional support station about an hour into the festivities. My beer was getting warm in my hand, but I was nursing it like it was the last life preserver on the Titanic. Denise had made these little bacon-wrapped jalapeno things that were absolutely lethal, and I'd already burned my mouth twice, but pain was better than making small talk with Brad from accounting about his new lawnmower. The guy had literally cornered me for 15 minutes explaining the benefits of mulching blades versus bagging blades, and I'd seriously considered faking a medical emergency just to escape. Monica had been acting weird all night. Well, weirder than usual. She kept glancing at me with this expression that I can only describe as a mix between a cat about to knock something expensive off a shelf and a game show host about to reveal what's behind door number 3. She'd been drinking white wine at a pace that suggested she was either really nervous or training for some kind of Olympic chugging event. Her best friend Sabrina had arrived fashionably late, as usual, wearing this black dress that probably cost more than my car payment and looking like she'd just stepped off a magazine cover. Monica had practically tackled her at the door, and they'd been huddled in the corner doing that intense whisper-giggling thing that women do when they're either planning something diabolical or talking about someone's questionable life choices. I should have known something was up when Monica kept checking her phone and fixing her hair. She only does that when she's about to do something monumentally stupid and wants to make sure she looks good while doing it. But I was too busy trying to avoid eye contact with my boss, who'd shown up uninvited and was currently explaining his fantasy football strategy to anyone unfortunate enough to be within earshot. Then it happened. Monica climbed up on one of Cal's dining room chairs, a wooden one that probably wasn't rated for this level of drama. And I watched in slow-motion horror as she wobbled slightly, steadied herself by grabbing Denise's shoulder, and then raised her wine glass like she was about to give the State of the Union address. The music didn't stop immediately, so she had to shout, "Everyone," twice before someone finally had the sense to turn down the speaker. The sudden silence was deafening. You know that moment in movies where everything goes quiet and you can hear the protagonist's heartbeat? Yeah, it was exactly like that, except my heartbeat was accompanied by the sound of my dignity preparing to evacuate the premises. "I just want everyone to know," Monica announced, her voice carrying across the yard with the confidence of someone who definitely had one too many glasses of Chardonnay, "that Julian and I are in an open relationship now." I'm not exaggerating when I say that the entire party froze. Brad stopped mid-sentence about his stupid lawnmower. My boss's beer can paused halfway to his lips. Denise looked like someone had just told her that her house was on fire and her insurance had lapsed. Cal, God bless him, let out a quiet, "Oh shit," that perfectly summarized the collective sentiment of everyone present. 20-some faces swiveled toward me in perfect synchronization, like I was suddenly the most interesting thing that had ever happened in this subdivision, which, to be fair, I probably was at that exact moment. Monica was standing there on that chair, smirking down at me with this expression of pure triumph, like she'd just won some kind of twisted game I didn't even know we were playing. She was waiting, practically vibrating with anticipation, for me to turn red, to stammer, to maybe start crying or begging or doing whatever the hell she'd fantasized I would do when she dropped this particular bombshell. I could see it in her eyes. She wanted me to crumble, to make a scene, to prove to everyone that she still had control over me like I was some kind of emotional puppet and she was pulling all the strings. But here's the thing about being pushed to your absolute limit. Eventually, something breaks, and it's either going to be you or the illusion you've been living under. I chose the illusion. I took a long, slow sip of my warm beer, feeling every single pair of eyes boring into me. Then I smiled. Not a big smile, just a small, calm one, and said in the most casual voice I could muster, "As you wish." The confusion on Monica's face was absolutely priceless. That wasn't the reaction she'd been expecting. Not even close. But I wasn't done. I turned to Sabrina, who was standing near the patio door looking absolutely stunning and slightly amused by the whole train wreck unfolding before her. Our eyes met, and I saw something flicker there, surprise, maybe, or respect, or possibly just the realization that she was about to become part of whatever insane plot twist this night had become. "Sabrina," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, keeping my voice steady and conversational like I was asking her about the weather, You free this weekend? I'd love to take you out. The silence that followed was somehow even more profound than the first one. I swear I could hear someone's jaw literally drop. Cal whispered something that sounded like, "Oh my God," mixed with a laugh. Brad from accounting looked like he'd just witnessed a miracle. My boss actually smiled for the first time in the 3 years I'd worked for him. Sabrina didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, that dangerous smile spreading across her face like wildfire, and said in a voice dripping with confidence, "Of course. I can do everything better than her anyway." Someone dropped a plate. It shattered on the concrete patio with a crash that seemed to punctuate the moment perfectly. The guy from my gym actually started clapping before someone elbowed him to stop. Cal was gripping Denise's arm so hard I thought he might leave a bruise, both of them staring at the scene like they were watching the season finale of their favorite show. I looked back at Monica, still standing on that chair, and watched in real time as her smug expression collapsed faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The wine glass in her hand started trembling. For the first time in what felt like 7 years of marriage, I think my wife forgot how to breathe, how to speak, how to do anything except stand there and realize that she'd just made the biggest tactical error of her life. And for the first time in 7 years, I felt absolutely, gloriously free. The party didn't exactly recover after that little nuclear detonation. People started making those polite excuses that everyone knows are bullshit. Early mornings, babysitter issues, sudden migraines that definitely had nothing to do with the social apocalypse they'd just witnessed. Cal tried to restart the music, but it felt like putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. Within 15 minutes, the backyard had cleared out faster than a movie theater after someone yells fire, and I was left standing there with my warm beer, watching Monica climb down from her throne of poor decisions with all the grace of a newborn giraffe. She didn't look at me, not directly. Instead, she made a big show of thanking Denise for the lovely party and complimenting the decorations like she hadn't just detonated a social grenade in the middle of the potato salad. Sabrina had already left, smart woman, after giving me a quick wink and mouthing, "Text me," when Monica wasn't looking. Cal walked me to the door and clapped me on the shoulder with the kind of firm grip that men use when words would just complicate things. "That was legendary, bro," he whispered. "Absolutely legendary." Coming from a guy who once tried to deep fry a turkey in his garage and nearly burned down his house, that was high praise indeed. Monica was already at the car, standing by the passenger door with her arms crossed, and that expression on her face that I'd come to recognize over 7 years of marriage. The one that said she was gearing up for a fight and had already rehearsed her opening arguments in the bathroom mirror. Her heels were clicking against the driveway like little gunshots, tap, 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 a staccato rhythm of barely contained rage. The string lights from Cal's yard cast weird shadows across her face, making her look like a character from one of those film noir movies where everyone's got an angle and nobody's telling the truth. I unlocked the car, but she didn't get in. Of course she didn't. That would have been too easy, too civil, too much like acknowledging that maybe, just maybe, she'd screwed up royally and we could deal with it like adults when we got home. No, Monica needed an audience. Even if that audience was just the neighbors' houses with their windows glowing in the darkness, and probably half of them peeking through their curtains to see if the entertainment was going to continue. "Get in the car, Monica," I said, keeping my voice level and calm, which I knew would irritate her even more than yelling. She hated when I was calm. It meant she couldn't paint me as the irrational one, couldn't play the victim card she kept in her back pocket for emergencies. "No," she said, like a toddler refusing to leave the playground. "We're talking about this right now." I leaned against the driver's door and crossed my arms, mirroring her posture. "Okay, talk." She stepped closer, her heels clicking again, and I could smell the wine on her breath mixed with her perfume. Something expensive that she'd bought last month after watching some influencer video about signature scents and personal branding. Everything with Monica was about presentation, about how things looked from the outside, like our entire marriage was just a really elaborate Instagram post, and she was constantly adjusting the filter. "What the hell was that?" she hissed, her voice low and sharp like a knife, trying to stay quiet. "What the hell was that back there?" I shrugged, going for casual even though my heart was pounding like I'd just run a marathon. "What you announced, apparently. An open relationship. I'm just taking your lead, sweetheart. Following your vision for our future together." Her eyes narrowed, and I could practically see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out how to spin this, how to rewrite the narrative, so she came out looking like the reasonable one. "You know I didn't mean it like that," she said, and there it was, the backpedal, the revision, the classic Monica move of saying something insane and then acting shocked when people took her at her word. "Really?" I said, pushing off from the car and taking a step toward her. Not aggressive, just closing the distance enough that she couldn't pretend we were having two different conversations. Because the crowd looked pretty convinced. Brad from accounting looked like he'd just witnessed the second coming. My boss actually smiled for the first time since the fiscal quarter started. Cal whispered, "Oh damn," so loud I'm pretty sure the people on the next street heard it. "So either you're a really convincing liar, or you meant every word." She started pacing back and forth across the driveway like one of those malfunctioning robot vacuums that keeps bumping into the same wall over and over again. Her heels were going to leave marks in Cal's asphalt, but I figured that was the least of anyone's concerns at this point. "It was a joke, Julian. A joke. I was trying to be funny, to lighten the mood. By announcing our private business to 25 people? That's your idea of comedy?" Because let me tell you, it killed. Absolutely murdered. The room was dead silent. "So if that was your goal, congratulations, you nailed it." She whipped around to face me, and I could see the desperation starting to creep into her expression, the realization that her plan, whatever insane plan she'd cooked up with Sabrina or in her own head, had backfired spectacularly. "You're being ridiculous. You know you're being ridiculous, right? Asking out my best friend in front of everyone. That was cruel. That was deliberately cruel." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of her calling me cruel after what she'd just pulled was so rich, so perfectly Monica, that all I could do was laugh. "You've been talking about open relationships for months," I said, once I'd gotten control of myself. "Months, Monica. What if we explored other connections? Don't you think monogamy is just a social construct? We should be free to experience life fully." I've heard every variation of that speech while you're scrolling through your phone at midnight, reading articles about polyamory and ethical non-monogamy like they're the holy scriptures. So congratulations, you got what you wanted. You got your open relationship. Effective immediately. Consider this the grand opening. Her face went through about 6 different expressions in the span of 3 seconds. Shock, anger, confusion, horror, and finally landing on something that looked almost like fear. "You're not serious." "Oh, I'm dead serious. More serious than I've been about anything in years. You made the announcement. You set the terms. I'm just playing by the rules you established. That's how this works, right? Open means open. For both of us." She blinked at me like I'd just started speaking Mandarin, her perfectly made-up eyes going wide. But I didn't. I wasn't. You can't just. Can't just what? Accept the relationship parameters you publicly announced? Take you at your word? Treat you like an adult who means what she says? Which part am I not allowed to do exactly? A car drove past, slowing down slightly, and I could see the silhouette of someone's head turning to look at us. Great. Tomorrow the whole neighborhood would be talking about the Ross family drama. Monica noticed too and lowered her voice even more. "This isn't what I wanted." "Then what did you want?" I asked, genuinely curious now. What was the goal here? Humiliate me? Test me? See if I'd roll over and take it like I've taken everything else for the past 7 years? Sorry to disappoint, but I'm fresh out of tolerance for your bullshit. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. For once in her life, Monica was actually speechless, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd seen all night. Even better than Sabrina's smile, even better than Cal's shocked expression, even better than the look on my boss's face when he realized he'd witnessed the best entertainment his boring suburban life had seen in years. "I'm going home," I said, unlocking the car with a beep that sounded way too cheerful for the moment. "You can come with me, or you can walk. Either way, this conversation is over." I got in the car, started the engine, and waited. She stood there for another 30 seconds, probably hoping I'd cave, hoping I'd apologize, hoping this was all some elaborate bluff that she could call. But when I put the car in reverse, she finally scrambled to the passenger side and got in, slamming the door hard enough to make the whole car shake. We drove home in complete silence, the kind of thick, suffocating silence that feels like it has weight and substance. I turned on the radio just to have something other than the sound of her breathing. And of course it was playing some sappy love song about forever and always and never letting go. I changed the station to sports talk. Much better. When we pulled into our driveway, she finally spoke. You embarrassed me. I turned off the engine and looked at her, really looked at her, and I couldn't believe I'd spent 7 years with someone who could say something that delusional with a straight face. I embarrassed you? Sweetheart, you stood up at my birthday party and declared to everyone we know that you're open for business. I just accepted your business plan. If you're embarrassed, maybe next time think before you speak. I got out of the car and headed inside, leaving her sitting there in the darkness. Cal sent me a text before I even made it to the bedroom. Dude, that was the most badass thing I've ever seen. I smiled, plugged in my phone, and went to bed. For the first time in years, I slept like a baby. I woke up to the sound of the front door slamming at what my phone informed me was 3:47 in the morning, which meant Monica had been out doing God knows what for the past 6 hours. Part of me, the part that had been trained through 7 years of marriage to worry and wonder and wait up, wanted to get out of bed and check on her. The other part, the newer part that had apparently grown a spine sometime between the snack table and Sabrina's smile, rolled over and went back to sleep. That part won. When I finally dragged myself out of bed around 7:30, I found Monica passed out on the living room couch, still wearing her party dress, her makeup smeared across her face like a raccoon who'd gone 12 rounds with a bottle of wine and lost spectacularly. One of her heels was on the coffee table, the other was inexplicably in the kitchen doorway, and there was a half-eaten bag of chips spilled across the carpet like some kind of sad, crunchy crime scene. The whole picture screamed poor life choices, which seemed to be Monica's brand lately. I stepped over the chips, made myself some coffee, the good stuff I kept hidden in the back of the cabinet because Monica always complained it was too strong, and settled in at the kitchen table with my laptop to check my email. The coffee was perfect, dark and bitter, exactly how I liked it and exactly how Monica hated it, which somehow made it taste even better this morning. I was halfway through reading a passive-aggressive email from Brad about quarterly reports when I heard movement from the living room, followed by a groan that sounded like a wounded animal trying to. Remember, Wyatt had decided to play dead. Monica stumbled into the kitchen looking like death warmed over, reheated, and then left out in the sun for a week. Her hair was sticking up in about 17 different directions. Her mascara had migrated to her cheekbones, and she was squinting at me like I was the sun, and she was a vampire who'd forgotten to check the weather forecast before going outside. Coffee, she croaked, reaching for my mug with the desperation of someone who'd just crossed a desert. I pulled it away before she could grab it. Make your own. She stared at me like I'd just suggested she solve a complex mathematical equation using only interpretive dance. Are you serious right now? Dead serious. There's a coffee maker right there. You know how to use it. I've seen you do it before. Several times, actually. You're a grown woman with opposable thumbs. I have faith in you. She stood there swaying slightly, trying to decide if she had the energy to argue or if she should just make her own damn coffee. Self-preservation won out, and she shuffled over to the coffee maker like a zombie in designer pajamas. Well, a designer dress from last night that now looked like it had been through a wood chipper. I watched her fumble with the coffee grounds, spilling half of them on the counter, and felt absolutely zero obligation to help. Where were you until 4 in the morning? I asked, taking another sip of my coffee. Delicious. She didn't turn around. Out. Out where? Just out. With Sabrina. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Sabrina? Really? That's the lie you're going with? Because Sabrina texted me at 11 saying she was home watching Netflix and thanks for the entertainment at the party. So unless she's developed the ability to be in 2 places at once, you're going to need a better story. Monica's shoulders tensed up, and she still didn't turn around, just kept focusing on the coffee maker like it was the most fascinating piece of machinery she'd ever encountered. Fine. I was at a bar. Alone. Happy. Ecstatic. Did you meet anyone interesting? Have any deep conversations about the nature of open relationships? Maybe hand out some business cards. She finally whipped around, and I could see her hangover had not improved her mood one bit. You embarrassed me, she shouted, then immediately winced and grabbed her head. You embarrassed me in front of everyone we know. I set down my coffee mug very carefully and looked at her with the kind of calm that I knew would drive her absolutely insane. I embarrassed you? Sweetheart, you stood up at my birthday party, which you supposedly helped plan, and declared to everyone we know that you're open for business. I just accepted your business plan. If anything, I was being supportive. Isn't that what a good husband does? Support his wife's decisions. She didn't appreciate the sarcasm. I could tell because her face went through this whole journey of expressions: anger, frustration, confusion, and finally landing on something that looked like she was trying to calculate if murder would be worth the prison sentence. You know that's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I asked, genuinely curious at this point. Help me understand, because from where I was standing, which was next to the snack table holding a beer and minding my own business, you seemed pretty clear. You used your outside voice. You made eye contact with the crowd. You waited for the music to stop. That's not the behavior of someone making an offhand joke. That's the behavior of someone making an announcement. She grabbed her coffee, which she'd somehow managed to make despite her obvious hangover and coordination issues, and took a long drink, probably buying time to think of something to say that would make this my fault somehow. It was her favorite magic trick, turning her mistakes into my problems. I was trying to spice things up, she said finally, to make the party more interesting, to give people something to talk about. Mission accomplished. I guarantee you everyone at that party is talking about us right now. Cal's probably already told half the neighborhood. Brad from accounting has definitely updated his group chat. My boss is probably wondering if he should add this to my performance review. Julian handled public humiliation with remarkable composure. So congratulations, you succeeded wildly. Her eyes started filling with tears, and I recognized the move immediately. The waterworks, the vulnerability play, the classic Monica technique for when logic and reason weren't working in her favor. It was Oscar-worthy, really. She should have gone into acting instead of real estate. How can you be so cold? She asked, her voice breaking in all the right places. I made a mistake, okay? I had too much wine. I said something stupid, and now you're acting like I committed some kind of terrible crime. Can't you just forgive me and move on? I stood up, took my coffee mug to the sink, and rinsed it out while I considered my response. Behind me, I could hear her sniffling dramatically, probably hoping I'd turn around and cave, apologize, take it all back, and pretend last night never happened. But something had shifted in me last night, something fundamental and irreversible, like a bone that had been broken so many times it finally just refused to heal the wrong way anymore. You know what the funny thing is? I said, still facing the sink. I would have forgiven almost anything else. If you'd gotten drunk and told everyone I snore. If you'd shared some embarrassing story about me from college. If you'd made fun of my dad jokes, or my terrible dancing, or that time I accidentally locked myself out of the house wearing only a towel. I would have laughed it off, because that's what you do when you love someone. You laugh at their expense sometimes, and they laugh at yours, and everyone moves on. I turned around to face her. But you didn't do any of that. You announced, publicly, deliberately, that our marriage was open. That's not a joke. That's not spicing things up. That's either a genuine desire to change the fundamental terms of our relationship, or it's a calculated attempt to humiliate me and assert dominance. Either way, it's not something I can just forgive and forget. She was full-on crying now, mascara running down her face in black rivers, looking like a sad Gothic painting. So what are you saying? You want a divorce? I'm saying I told you point blank yesterday. You made the rules, now you live by them. We have an open relationship now. Effective immediately. Those are your terms, and I accept them completely. But I don't want. Too late. The genie's out of the bottle, Monica. You can't just stuff it back in because you don't like what you wished for. She stood there crying, and I felt something, but it wasn't guilt or sympathy or the desire to fix things. It was more like watching a stranger have a breakdown in a grocery store. Vaguely uncomfortable, but not my responsibility. I grabbed my keys and my wallet from the counter. Where are you going? She asked, panic creeping into her voice. Work. Some of us have jobs that require us to show up on time and sober. It's Sunday. I have reports to catch up on. I'll be home when I'm home. I left her standing there in the kitchen, tears streaming down her face, and I didn't look back. My phone buzzed before I even made it to the car. Sabrina. She had that coming. Saturday at 7. Don't be late. I smiled, actually smiled. For what felt like the first time in years that wasn't forced or fake or for someone else's benefit. I texted back quickly before starting the car. Me, wouldn't miss it. When I went to bed that night, after spending 8 blissful hours at the office doing actual work and not dealing with Monica's drama, she had moved into the guest room. I could hear her through the wall, probably crying again or calling her friends to complain about what a terrible husband I was. I didn't care. I slept like a baby. Monday morning arrived with all the enthusiasm of a dental appointment, and I woke up to the smell of pancakes wafting through the house like some kind of olfactory peace offering. Now, Monica hadn't made breakfast in approximately 3 years. Not since that one time she tried to impress her mother and nearly set the kitchen on fire trying to poach eggs. So the fact that she was suddenly channeling her inner Martha Stewart was about as subtle as a billboard that read, "I screwed up, and now I'm trying to fix it with carbs." I shuffled into the kitchen to find her standing at the stove wearing an apron I didn't even know we owned, flipping pancakes with the kind of focused determination usually reserved for people defusing bombs. The table was set, actually set, with matching plates and everything, and there was orange juice in actual glasses instead of the plastic cups we normally used. She'd even put out butter in a little ceramic dish and real maple syrup instead of the cheap stuff we bought in bulk from Costco. The whole scene looked like a stock photo titled, "Happy Suburban Breakfast," except for the underlying tension that you could have cut with a knife. "Good morning," she said with the kind of forced cheerfulness that belongs in a toothpaste commercial. "I made your favorite, blueberry pancakes." I stood in the doorway, taking in the scene, trying to figure out what play she was running. This was classic Monica. When words failed, she pivoted to gestures, as if a stack of pancakes could somehow erase the fact that she'd publicly announced our marriage was open less than 72 hours ago. "Thanks," I said, sitting down at the table like a polite hostage who knows that cooperating sometimes gets you released faster. She served me a stack of pancakes that were actually pretty decent looking, golden brown, fluffy, the blueberries distributed evenly like she'd actually followed a recipe instead of just winging it. She sat down across from me with her own plate and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, watching me take the first bite like she was waiting for me to declare her the winner of some cooking competition she'd entered without my knowledge. "These are good," I said, because they were, and because I was raised to have manners even when dealing with people who'd recently tried to humiliate me in front of 25 witnesses. "I'm glad you like them," she said, and then launched into this whole monologue about her day plans, errands she needed to run, a showing she had scheduled for a client, something about needing to pick up dry cleaning. Like we were just a normal couple having a normal Monday morning conversation and not two people currently living in the emotional aftermath of a social nuclear explosion. I ate my pancakes quietly, nodded when appropriate, and thanked her for breakfast before heading upstairs to get ready for work. The whole thing felt surreal, like we were actors in a play who'd both decided to pretend the last scene never happened. But I wasn't buying what she was selling, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let pancakes, even really good pancakes, erase the fact that she'd tried to publicly humiliate me, and it had backfired spectacularly. Work was its own special kind of hell that day. I work in project management for a tech company, which basically means I spend 8 hours a day in meetings explaining to people why their timelines are unrealistic and their budgets are imaginary. It's soul-crushing in the way that most corporate jobs are, but it pays well and the health insurance is decent. So I show up and pretend to care about quarterly projections and synergy and all the other buzzwords that executives love to throw around like confetti. My phone started buzzing around 10 in the morning. "Monica." I declined the call and went back to my spreadsheet. It buzzed again 5 minutes later, then again 10 minutes after that. By lunchtime, she'd called me 8 times, sent 12 texts, and left 3 voicemails. I ignored all of them with the kind of petty satisfaction that probably wasn't healthy, but felt absolutely amazing. The text started out apologetic. "Can we please talk?" Then graduated to frustrated. "Why are you ignoring me?" And finally landed on angry. "This is ridiculous, Julian. Call me back." I watched the evolution of her emotional state play out in real time on my phone screen between budget meetings and didn't respond to a single one. It was liberating, honestly. For 7 years, I'd been trained to respond immediately to her calls and texts, to drop whatever I was doing and attend to whatever crisis or complaint or random thought she needed to share. But that version of Julian was gone, replaced by someone who could look at his buzzing phone and think, "Not my problem," without feeling guilty about it. Kel texted me around 2. "Dude, Monica just called Denise asking if you were okay. What's going on?" I texted back, "I'm great. Just ignoring my wife. Living my best life." Cal sent back 3 laughing emojis, and a thumbs up. When I finally got home around 6, I'd stayed an extra hour at the office just to prove a point. Monica was waiting for me in the living room like a tiger who'd been pacing in a cage all day. She practically launched herself off the couch when I walked in. "You're being immature," she shouted before I'd even gotten my shoes off. I set down my briefcase very carefully and looked at her with the kind of calm that I knew would make her absolutely crazy. "I prefer the term strategically unbothered," I said. "Has a nicer ring to it, don't you think?" Her face went through this interesting color progression, pink to red to purple, like she was a mood ring stuck on angry. "I called you 8 times. 8. And you didn't answer once. I was at work. You know, that place where I go to earn money, so we can afford this house and your expensive taste in wine. I was busy, doing my job. Revolutionary concept, I know. Don't patronize me. Then don't call me 8 times when you know I'm working. There's this amazing invention called self-control. You should look into it." She started pacing, her arms crossed tight across her chest like she was physically holding herself together. "We need to talk about what happened. We need to figure this out. We can't just keep avoiding." "I'm not avoiding anything," I interrupted. "You announced we have an open relationship. I accepted those terms. What exactly is there to figure out? You set the parameters, I'm living within them. This is what you wanted, right? Freedom? Exploration? The ability to do whatever you want without consequences." She stopped pacing and stared at me like I'd just spoken in ancient Greek. "I'm going out Friday night," she said, like it was a threat or a test or some kind of challenge. I shrugged and headed toward the kitchen to see what we had for dinner. "Have fun." She followed me, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor in that staccato rhythm that meant she was gearing up for round 2. "Did you hear me? I said I'm going out Friday night." "I heard you. I said have fun." "Which part of that sentence is confusing?" She froze, and I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out why I wasn't reacting the way she wanted. "You don't even care?" I opened the fridge, saw we had leftover Chinese food from last week that definitely needed to be thrown out, and made a mental note to order pizza later. "Monica, you announced an open relationship. I'm just following the syllabus. You go out Friday, I'll probably order pizza and watch a movie. Maybe that new action thing with the car chases. Sounds like a perfect Friday night to me. But you don't care that I'm going out. Should I? You're a grown woman. You can do whatever you want. That's the whole point of being open, right? Freedom and independence and all that modern relationship stuff you've been reading about." I could see her brain short-circuiting, trying to process the fact that her grand gesture of rebellion wasn't having the desired effect. She wanted me to fight, to beg her not to go, to prove that I still cared enough to be jealous. But that ship had sailed, probably sometime around the moment she climbed on that chair at my birthday party. Friday came faster than I expected, probably because I spent most of the week actively avoiding Monica and burying myself in work. She spent the days leading up to it dropping hints about her plans. She was meeting friends. She'd be out late. She was getting her hair done Thursday afternoon. Each hint was clearly designed to provoke some kind of reaction from me, but I just nodded and went back to whatever I was doing like she was discussing the weather. Friday evening, she emerged from our bedroom looking like she was auditioning for a perfume commercial. She'd gone all out. The black dress that probably cost more than my laptop, heels that added 3 inches to her height, makeup that could have been professionally done, hairstyled in those beachy waves that somehow require 2 hours and 17 products to achieve. She lingered in the living room, doing that thing where she pretended to look for her keys while actually waiting for me to notice her and comment. "You look nice," I said from the couch, not looking up from my phone. "That's it. That's all you have to say. Would you prefer I wrote a sonnet? I'm a little rusty on my Shakespeare, but I can give it a shot." She grabbed her purse with more force than necessary. "I'll be home late. Don't wait up." "Wasn't planning on it. Drive safe." She left in a cloud of expensive perfume and righteous indignation, slamming the door just hard enough to make her point. I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway. Then I ordered a large pizza, half pepperoni, half mushroom, because I'm a man of sophisticated tastes, and queued up that action movie I'd been wanting to watch. The one with Keanu Reeves shooting people in increasingly creative ways. Perfect Friday night entertainment. The pizza arrived in 30 minutes, hot and greasy and absolutely perfect. I cracked open a beer, settled into the couch, and lost myself in explosions and car chases and dialogue so bad it wrapped back around to being good. Somewhere around the halfway point, I fell asleep, the pizza box open on the coffee table and the TV still playing. I woke up around 2 in the morning to the sound of the front door opening. Monica came stumbling in, and even from the couch I could tell she'd been crying. Her makeup was smeared, her hair was a mess, and she looked like someone who'd expected a fairy tale ending and got a reality check instead. She saw me on the couch and stopped. "You're still up." "Just woke up. Movie was boring." She stood there swaying slightly in her expensive heels, and I could see her trying to figure out what to say, how to play this moment. "I had a terrible night," she finally said, her voice small and broken. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered standing by that snack table holding a warm beer while she announced our private business to the entire neighborhood, and the sympathy evaporated like morning fog. "Sorry to hear that," I said, standing up and stretching. "I'm going to bed. There's leftover pizza if you're hungry." I walked past her, leaving her standing in the entryway with her ruined makeup and her ruined night, and I didn't look back. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect weather that makes you think maybe the universe is trying to tell you something. Clear skies, temperature in the low 70s, just enough breeze to keep things comfortable without messing up your hair. I stood in front of my closet staring at my pathetic collection of shirts like I was picking out armor for battle, which in a way I guess I was. Monica had made it very clear over the years which clothes she approved of and which ones made me look, according to her expert fashion opinion, like a middle-aged dad trying too hard or someone who shops exclusively at gas stations. My hand landed on the blue button-down that she absolutely despised. The one she told me made me look too confident and like you're trying to prove something, which at the time I'd thought was a weird complaint but now made perfect sense. God forbid her husband look confident. That might give him ideas above his station. I pulled it on, checked myself in the mirror, and had to admit, I looked pretty damn good. The shirt fit well, brought out my eyes, and yeah, maybe I did look confident. Confident looked good on me. I should have worn this shirt more often instead of letting it collect dust in the back of my closet like some kind of banned substance. I paired it with jeans, the dark ones without any holes or weird distressing, because I'm 35 not 22, and my decent shoes, the leather ones I usually save for work presentations and funerals. A quick check of my hair, a spritz of cologne that I'd bought myself last month after Monica told me my old one smelled too aggressive, and I was ready. I looked like a functional adult human who had his shit together, which was either the truth or the world's most convincing lie. Either way, I'd take it. The drive to Sabrina's apartment took about 20 minutes through the kind of suburban sprawl that all looks the same. Shopping centers, chain restaurants, housing developments with names like Willow Creek Estates, even though there were no willows and definitely no creek. She lived in one of those modern apartment complexes that tried really hard to look upscale with their fake stone facades and dramatic lighting. The kind of place that charged an extra $200 a month for what they called luxury amenities, which basically meant there was a gym nobody used and a pool that was always slightly too cold. I texted her when I pulled into the parking lot, "Here," and she responded immediately with "Be right down," which I appreciated because it meant I didn't have to navigate the weird social dynamics of whether to go up to her apartment or wait in the car like some kind of rideshare driver. About 2 minutes later, she emerged from the main entrance, and I'm not gonna lie, I had to do a double take. Sabrina had always been attractive. You'd have to be blind not to notice. But Monica's best friend had always existed in this sort of off-limits mental category, like a museum painting you could look at but never touch. Tonight, though, seeing her walk toward my car in dark jeans and a green top that somehow looked both casual and elegant at the same time, her hair down and natural instead of styled within an inch of its life, I realized I'd never actually looked at her before. Not really. She was effortlessly stunning in a way that didn't require 3 hours of preparation and a small pharmacy's worth of products. Just her. No armor, no performance, no filter. It was refreshing as hell. She slid into the passenger seat with a smile that could probably convince people to make poor financial decisions. "Right on time," she said, clicking her seatbelt. "I'm impressed." "I've been on time since 1989, I said, backing out of the parking space with what I hoped looked like confidence and not the mild panic of a man who hadn't been on anything resembling a date in about 8 years. It's literally my only good habit. Everything else about me is a disaster, but I'll be damned if I'm late. She laughed. A real laugh, not the polite twitter that people do when they're trying to be nice. And I felt something in my chest unclench that I hadn't even realized was tight. Where are we going? She asked. That Italian place downtown. Giovanni's. You been there? Once, like 2 years ago. It was good. Monica hated it because they didn't have the wine she wanted. But that's Monica for you. If it's not exactly what she pictured, it's garbage. And just like that, we were off to the races, talking about Monica like she was a character in a TV show we both watched rather than someone who'd been a central figure in both our lives. It felt weird at first, like we were breaking some unspoken rule, but Sabrina had this way of making everything feel normal, like of course we were going to talk about this. Why wouldn't we? The restaurant was busy, but not packed. That perfect sweet spot where you can have a conversation without shouting, but there's enough ambient noise that you don't feel like everyone's listening to your business. The hostess, a college-aged girl with purple streaks in her hair, who looked like she'd rather be literally anywhere else, seated us at a table near the window, and I ordered a beer while Sabrina got some kind of cocktail with a name I couldn't pronounce that involved elderflower and gin. So, she said once the waitress had disappeared with our drink orders, leaning back in her chair and studying me with those sharp eyes that didn't miss much. How are you holding up? And I want the real answer, not the I'm fine bullshit people usually give. I considered lying, because that's what you do in polite society. You lie and say everything's great even when your life is actively on fire. But something about Sabrina made me want to tell the truth, maybe because she'd witnessed the initial explosion and lying to her felt pointless. Honestly, I feel like I've been asleep for 7 years and I just woke up. Everything's sharper, clearer. Even the bad stuff doesn't feel as heavy because at least it's real, you know? She nodded like she understood completely. Monica's been testing you for months, she said, and there was no judgment in her voice, just observation. Pushing boundaries, saying outrageous things, seeing how far she could go before you snapped. I watched it happen. We all did. And nobody thought to mention this to me. Would you have believed us? Or would you have defended her and convinced yourself we were wrong? She had a point. I probably would have done exactly that, because that's what I'd been doing for years, making excuses, explaining away her behavior, convincing myself that this was just how marriage worked, and everyone's wife was secretly kind of terrible, and you just dealt with it. Our drinks arrived, and I took a long sip of my beer while trying to figure out how to articulate what I was thinking. The crazy thing is, I didn't snap. That's what she wanted. She wanted me to lose my shit, make a scene, prove that I was the irrational one. But I didn't. I just opted out of her game. You didn't snap, Sabrina agreed, taking a sip of her fancy cocktail and making a face that suggested it was stronger than expected. You evolved. Big difference. Snapping is emotional and temporary. Evolution is permanent. We ordered food. I got the carbonara because life's too short for boring pasta. She got some kind of seafood linguine that looked way fancier than anything I'd have ordered, and spent the next hour talking about everything and nothing. Work stories, the absurdity of Cal's inability to operate a grill without creating a smoke signal visible from space. Her terrible ex-boyfriend, who'd once tried to convince her that astrology was more reliable than modern medicine. My boss's obsession with buzzwords that meant absolutely nothing. It was easy. That's what struck me most. How easy it was to talk to her, to laugh with her, to exist in the same space without constantly monitoring my words or worrying that I'd say something that would set off a landmine I didn't know existed. With Monica, every conversation was a minefield. With Sabrina, it was just conversation. Novel concept. By the time dessert rolled around, we split a tiramisu because neither of us wanted a full dessert, but both of us wanted something sweet. I'd almost forgotten that this was supposed to be some kind of revenge date or statement or whatever the hell it had been when I'd asked her out. It had just become two people enjoying each other's company, which was more than I'd done with my actual wife in years. Sabrina leaned forward, her elbows on the table, and fixed me with that direct stare that made it impossible to look away. You know you're going to leave her eventually, right? I laughed, but it came out shakier than I intended. What are you, psychic now? You got a crystal ball hidden in your purse. No, just observant. You've tasted peace now, Julian. You've seen what it feels like to have a conversation that doesn't end in a fight, to spend an evening without walking on eggshells, To just exist without constantly wondering if you're about to get attacked for some imaginary slight. You think you can go back to chaos after this? You think you can go back to her after remembering what normal feels like? I wanted to argue, to say she was wrong, to defend my marriage out of habit if nothing else. But the words wouldn't come, because deep down, deeper than I wanted to admit, I knew she was right. This was the preview of a life I'd forgotten was possible, and going back to Monica after this would be like voluntarily climbing back into a burning building after someone had pulled you to safety. She wasn't always like this, I said, but even to my own ears it sounded weak. Maybe not, but she is now. And you can either spend the next 7 years hoping she'll change back into whoever she used to be, or you can accept that this is who she is and decide if that's what you want for the rest of your life. We split the check, she insisted, even though I'd asked her out, and walked back to my car under streetlights that turned everything slightly orange. The drive back to her apartment was quieter, but it was a comfortable quiet, the kind that doesn't need to be filled with meaningless chatter. Thanks for tonight, she said when I pulled into her parking lot. I had fun. Real fun. Not the fake kind you have to convince yourself you're having. Me too, I said, and meant it completely. She got out, then leaned back in through the open door. Julian, when you finally decide to leave, and you will, don't second-guess yourself. You deserve better than what you've been settling for. She closed the door and walked toward her building, and I sat there for a minute watching her go, thinking about peace and chaos and the difference between the two. She wasn't wrong. She wasn't wrong about any of it. I pulled into our driveway around 10:30, which was practically the middle of the night by suburban standards where everyone's in bed by 9 because they have to wake up at dawn to beat traffic or walk their designer dogs or whatever the hell people do at 6 in the morning. The porch light was on, which wasn't unusual, but so were the living room lights and the kitchen lights and what looked like every single light in the entire house, like Monica was trying to summon me home with some kind of illuminated bat signal. Subtle as a brick through a window, that woman. I sat in the car for a minute after turning off the engine, just preparing myself mentally for whatever fresh hell awaited me inside. My phone had been mercifully quiet all evening. No calls, no texts, no desperate attempts to check in on me or guilt me into coming home early. I'd almost thought maybe she'd decided to be mature about the whole thing, but the light show coming from our house suggested otherwise. Monica didn't do mature. Monica did dramatic, with a side of passive-aggressive and a garnish of manufactured crisis. When I finally dragged myself out of the car and walked up to the front door, I could see her through the window, sitting on the couch with her arms crossed and her leg bouncing in that rapid-fire way that meant she'd been sitting there working herself into a frenzy for however many hours I'd been gone. She was still wearing the clothes from her disastrous Friday night out, different outfit than her going-out ensemble, which meant she'd changed at some point, probably trying on 17 different things before settling on casual jeans and a t-shirt that screamed, "I'm approachable and reasonable," even though we both knew that was a lie. I opened the door and was immediately hit with the smell of cleaning products, lemon and bleach, and that fake lavender scent that's supposed to be calming, but actually just makes everything smell like a hospital trying to mask something terrible. She'd stress cleaned. The coffee table was spotless. The throw pillows were arranged with military precision, and I could see vacuum lines in the carpet. When Monica stress cleaned, it meant she was either planning to murder me or she was having a complete psychological breakdown. Sometimes both. "You're home," she said, like she was announcing the arrival of a delayed package she'd been tracking obsessively. "I am," I agreed, setting my keys in the little bowl by the door that we'd gotten as a wedding present from some aunt whose name I couldn't remember. "Did you wait up for me?" "That's sweet." "Unnecessary, but sweet." She stood up with the kind of dramatic flourish that belonged in a soap opera, her arms still crossed tight across her chest like she was physically holding herself together. "We need to talk." It's 10:30 on a Saturday night. Can it wait until morning? I've had a long day. I'm tired, and I really just want to go to bed and dream about literally anything other than whatever conversation you're about to force on me. No, it can't wait. She stepped in front of me, blocking my path to the stairs like a very attractive, very angry roadblock. "You had fun with her, didn't you?" I could have lied. Probably should have lied, because honesty was clearly not going to de-escalate this situation. But I was tired of lying, tired of managing her emotions, tired of pretending that everything was fine when it very obviously wasn't. Of course I had fun with her, I said, moving around her toward the kitchen because I needed water and maybe something stronger. We had great pasta. Really excellent carbonara. You should try it sometime. The kind that tastes like the chef actually gives a damn about what they're cooking. Also tastes like respect, which was a nice change of pace. That earned me a throw pillow to the chest, one of the decorative ones she'd arranged so carefully, now weaponized and flying through the air with surprising accuracy. It bounced off my sternum and landed on the floor, and I stared at it for a second before looking back at her. Really? We're throwing things now? That's the level we're at. You're enjoying this, she shouted, and her voice had that shrill quality that meant we were about to enter full meltdown territory. You're actually enjoying watching me suffer. I grabbed a glass from the cabinet and filled it with water from the fridge, taking my time, letting her words hang in the air between us. I'm not enjoying your suffering, Monica. I'm enjoying my freedom. There's a difference, and the fact that you can't see that difference is exactly the problem. She was pacing now, back and forth across the kitchen like a caged animal, her hands gesturing wildly as she tried to articulate whatever tornado of emotions was currently destroying her internal landscape. Are you in love with her? She demanded, stopping suddenly and fixing me with those eyes that I used to think were beautiful but now just looked desperate. Are you in love with Sabrina? Is that what this is about? I took a long drink of water, letting the question settle. Was I in love with Sabrina? No, not even close. But was tonight the most peace I'd felt in years? Absolutely. And was I about to admit any of that to Monica? Hell no. No, I said simply. I'm not in love with her. Then why? But she's easier to talk to than you. I interrupted, because if we were doing honesty, we might as well go all the way. She doesn't make every conversation feel like I'm navigating a minefield blindfolded. She doesn't announce my personal business to crowds of people. She doesn't spend 3 hours getting ready just to go out and make herself miserable in some pathetic attempt to make me jealous. And most importantly, she didn't stand up at my birthday party and humiliate me in front of everyone we know. Monica's eyes started filling with tears, round 2 of the waterworks, Electric Boogaloo, and I watched her face crumple like a paper bag someone had stomped on. I can't believe you're being so cruel, she said, her voice breaking in all the practiced places. After everything we've been through together, after 7 years of marriage, you're just going to throw it all away because I made one mistake. I set down my water glass and leaned against the counter, studying her like she was a puzzle I was trying to solve, except all the pieces were from different boxes and none of them fit together. This isn't about one night, Monica. This isn't about one mistake or one announcement or one embarrassing moment at a party. This is about 7 years. 7 years of you treating me like I'm your PR assistant whose job is to make you look good. 7 years of you making unilateral decisions and expecting me to just go along with them because, God forbid, I have an opinion or a preference or a shred of autonomy. That's not fair. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about fair. Fair would be you considering my feelings before you do things. Fair would be you treating me like a partner instead of an accessory. Fair would be you apologizing, genuinely apologizing, not the fake kind where you're really just mad you got caught, for standing up at my birthday party and making an announcement that affected both of us without bothering to consult me first. She was full-on sobbing now, the kind of crying that comes with hiccups and running mascara and those gasping breaths that sound like someone drowning on dry land. She sank down onto one of the kitchen chairs like her legs couldn't support her anymore, her head in her hands, her whole body shaking with the force of her tears. I'm sorry, she choked out between sobs. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean, I wasn't thinking. I just wanted. You wanted what? To spice up the party? To make things interesting? To see if you could push me far enough that I'd finally break. I shook my head, feeling something that might have been sympathy if I had any left to give, but my sympathy tank had been running on empty for months now. Well, congratulations. You succeeded. I broke. I just didn't break the way you expected. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes and a face that was somehow still beautiful even covered in tears and snot and misery. What does that mean? What are you saying? I'm saying that you spent so long trying to crack me, trying to find my breaking point, trying to prove that you had power over me, that you didn't notice I was slowly putting myself back together in a completely different configuration. You broke the old Julian, the one who apologized when you were wrong, who made excuses for your behavior, who convinced himself that this was just what marriage looked like. But the new Julian? He's not interested in playing your games anymore. So what? You're just done? You're just giving up on us? On 7 years of marriage? She stood up again, wiping at her face with the back of her hand, leaving. Mascara streaks across her cheek like war paint applied by someone who'd already lost the battle. People don't just throw away 7 years, Julian. That's not how this works. You're right, I said, grabbing my water glass and heading toward the stairs. People don't throw away 7 years. But they also don't spend 7 years in a relationship where one person gets to do whatever they want while the other person just takes it. So yeah, maybe I am done. Maybe I've been done for a while and just didn't want to admit it. Or maybe I'm exactly as done as you wanted me to be when you stood up on that chair and announced we were open. Hard to say, really. I started up the stairs, my legs suddenly feeling like they weighed about 1,000 pounds each, the exhaustion of the evening hitting me all at once. Behind me, I could hear Monica still crying, still trying to articulate some argument that would change my mind, still operating under the delusion that she could fix this with enough tears or the right combination of words. I can change, she called up after me, her voice desperate and pleading. I can be better. I can be the wife you deserve. Just give me another chance. I paused on the landing, my hand on the banister, and thought about all the times I'd heard some variation of that promise over the years. After fights, after her mistakes, after moments where she'd pushed too far and needed to reel me back in before I actually left. And I thought about how many times I'd believed her, how many chances I'd already given, how many times I'd convinced myself that this time would be different. Good night, Monica, I said without turning around, and continued up to our bedroom. I brushed my teeth, changed into sweatpants and an old t-shirt, and climbed into bed in the master bedroom. Our bed, the one we'd shared for years, but tonight it felt like just mine. I could hear her moving around downstairs, could hear the occasional sob echoing up through the vents, could hear her eventually retreat to the guest room where she'd been sleeping since her disastrous Friday night out. And for the first time in 7 years, I went to bed without apologizing, without trying to fix things, without taking responsibility for someone else's emotional crisis. I just lay there in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, and felt something I hadn't felt in longer than I could remember. I felt light, like someone had been piling weights on my chest for years, and I'd gotten so used to them I'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe normally. But now they were gone. Not all of them, but enough that I could take a full breath without feeling like my ribs were cracking. I fell asleep smiling, and I didn't dream about anything at all. Sunday morning hit me like a truck full of clarity and bad decisions wrapped in a bow made of freedom. And I woke up around 8 feeling more rested than I had in months despite the emotional warfare that had gone down in my kitchen approximately 9 hours earlier. The sun was streaming through the bedroom window in that annoyingly cheerful way that made me want to both embrace the new day and also pull the covers over my head and pretend the outside world didn't exist. I chose option 1, mostly because I had things to do and wallowing wasn't going to get them done. Monica was still asleep in the guest room. I could hear her snoring through the wall, this delicate little sound that she always insisted she didn't make, but absolutely did. And I took advantage of the quiet to shower, get dressed, and make myself a proper breakfast. Not pancakes designed to manipulate me into forgiveness, just scrambled eggs and toast, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. I ate standing at the kitchen counter, looking out the window at our boring suburban street with its identical houses and perfectly manicured lawns, and thought about how much of my life I'd spent trying to fit into this picture-perfect box that Monica had designed without asking if I actually wanted to live in it. Around 9:30, I called my boss and left a voicemail saying I had food poisoning and wouldn't be in on Monday. Did I feel slightly guilty lying? Sure. Was I actually going to let that stop me? Absolutely not. Sometimes you have to prioritize your mental health and your future over Brad from accounting's quarterly projections, and this was definitely one of those times. My boss would survive. Brad would survive. The company would continue its slow march toward mediocrity with, or without me, sitting in conference rooms pretending to care about synergy for 8 hours. Then I Googled divorce lawyers near me, and felt my stomach do this weird flip that was part terror and part excitement, like I was standing at the edge of a cliff trying to decide if I had the guts to jump. The first 3 results were these big corporate firms with names like Johnson, Patterson, and Associates, that probably cost more per hour than I made in a week. All sleek websites and promises to aggressively protect your interests, which sounded more like a threat than a selling point. The fourth result was a small practice run by someone named Eleanor Hanley, and her website was refreshingly normal. Just a simple page with her credentials, her areas of expertise, and a phone number. No stock photos of angry people pointing at each other across conference tables. No aggressive marketing copy about destroying your ex-spouse. Just straightforward information presented by someone who seemed like they might actually see me as a human being rather than a billable hour. I called before I could talk myself out of it, and a receptionist answered on the second ring with the kind of pleasant but professional voice that suggested she'd answered approximately 10,000 calls exactly like this one. Hanley Law Office, how can I help you? Hi. Yeah, I need to talk to someone about divorce. Is Mrs. Hanley available? She has an opening at 11 if you can make it in today. Otherwise, her next availability is Thursday afternoon. I looked at the clock. It was 9:45. 11 was doable. I'll take 11. Perfect. Can I get your name and phone number? I gave her the information. She confirmed the address. And just like that, I had an appointment to discuss ending my marriage. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life from the outside. Some Netflix drama about a guy who finally grew a backbone and decided to stop settling for misery disguised as commitment. Except it wasn't a Netflix drama. It was my actual life, and I was apparently the protagonist now instead of the supporting character in Monica's one-woman show. The drive to Mrs. Hanley's office took about 20 minutes through Sunday morning traffic, which is to say there was no traffic because everyone was either at church or still sleeping off whatever bad decisions they'd made Saturday night. Her office was in one of those converted houses that had been turned into professional space. A cute little Victorian painted pale blue with a sign out front that read Eleanor Hanley, attorney at law, in simple black letters. No flash, no pretense, just a lawyer doing her job. I already liked her. Inside, the waiting room looked more like someone's living room than a law office. Comfortable chairs, actual artwork on the walls instead of generic corporate prints, a coffee table with real magazines instead of ones from 2015. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with glasses on a chain and a warm smile, checked me in and told me Mrs. Hanley would be with me in just a moment. I sat down and tried not to think about what I was doing, which was impossible because what I was doing was literally the only thing my brain wanted to think about. Mrs. Hanley emerged from her office about 3 minutes later, and she was exactly what I needed her to be, professional but kind, probably in her early 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a bun and the no-nonsense air of someone who'd seen every variation of human relationship drama and wasn't shocked by any of it anymore. She shook my hand with a firm grip and led me into her office, which continued the comfortable living room aesthetic with a big wooden desk, bookshelves full of actual books, and a window that looked out onto a garden full of flowers that had no business looking that nice in October. So, she said, settling into her chair and pulling out a legal pad that had actual handwritten notes on it instead of a laptop. Tell me what's going on. I told her. All of it. The birthday party announcement, Sabrina, Monica's disastrous Friday night. The dinner that reminded me what peace felt like, the crying and the manipulation and the 7 years of slowly losing myself to someone else's vision of what our life should be. Mrs. Hanley listened without interrupting, taking notes occasionally, nodding in places that suggested she'd heard variations of this story about 1,000 times before. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me with the kind of straightforward honesty that I desperately needed. Any kids? No, thank God. Shared assets? House, cars, significant investments. House is in both our names. 2 cars, both paid off. Some savings, couple retirement accounts. Nothing too complicated. And you're sure about this? Because once we start the process, it's going to get messy. She's going to fight it. She's going to try to change your mind. She's going to make promises she probably can't keep. You need to be absolutely certain this is what you want. I thought about Monica standing in our kitchen last night, crying and begging and promising to change. I thought about 7 years of conversations that went nowhere, fights that solved nothing, apologies that never actually addressed the problem. I thought about Sabrina's words, "You've tasted peace now," and realized she was right. I couldn't go back. Not to that. I'm sure, I said. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Mrs. Hanley smiled, the kind of smile that said she believed me, and also approved. Then let's get you free, Mr. Ross. Here's what we're going to need. She handed me a list of documents: marriage certificate, financial statements, tax returns, property deeds, and walked me through the process. California was a no-fault state, which meant I didn't have to prove Monica did anything wrong. I just had to prove the marriage was broken. That part would be easy. The marriage had been broken for years. I'd just been too stubborn or scared or comfortable to admit it. By the time I left her office an hour later, I had a folder full of paperwork, a plan of action, and the first glimmer of hope I'd felt in longer than I could remember. This was happening. This was actually happening. I was getting out. I spent the rest of the afternoon gathering documents, pulling our marriage certificate from the filing cabinet, downloading bank statements, making copies of everything Mrs. Hanley had requested. It felt productive, purposeful, like I was finally taking control of my own life instead of just reacting to Monica's chaos. Around 6, I heard her car pull into the driveway. I was sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by paperwork when she walked in carrying bags of Chinese takeout, and the smell hit me immediately: sweet and sour chicken, lo mein, egg rolls, all my favorites. Another peace offering, another attempt to fix things with food instead of actual change. "I brought dinner," she said, her voice careful and measured like she was approaching a wild animal that might bolt at any sudden movement. "Your favorite. I thought maybe we could eat together, talk about things. Really talk, not fight." She looked better than she had last night. Showered, makeup done, wearing clothes that actually matched. She'd pulled herself together, probably spent the day psyching herself up for this conversation, rehearsing what she was going to say to convince me to stay. "I talked to Sabrina today," she continued, setting the bags on the counter and pulling out containers. "She told me I've been awful. She said I've been treating you like garbage and I didn't even realize it. Is that what everyone thinks of me? That I'm just this terrible person?" I grabbed an egg roll from the container she'd opened and took a bite, chewing slowly while I considered my response. "Pretty much," I said finally, because we were past the point of protecting her feelings. "Yeah, that's pretty much what everyone thinks." Her jaw dropped like I'd just told her Santa wasn't real and the Easter Bunny was a lie. "How can you be so cold? How can you just sit there and say that to me?" "I'm not cold, Monica. I'm just done getting burned. There's a difference." I finished the egg roll and wiped my hands on a napkin. And speaking of being done, I filed for divorce. The silence that followed was so complete, so absolute, that I could hear the refrigerator humming and the clock ticking on the wall and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Monica stood frozen by the counter, a container of lo mein in one hand and a pair of chopsticks in the other, her face cycling through expressions so fast I couldn't keep track: shock, disbelief, horror, anger, devastation. "You what?" she whispered. "I filed for divorce." "Well, I met with a lawyer and started the process. The paperwork will be officially filed in the next few days." The container slipped from her hand and hit the counter with a wet thud, noodles spilling out onto the granite like some kind of symbolic representation of our marriage. Messy, overflowing, impossible to clean up neatly. She looked like someone had just unplugged her soul and forgotten to plug it back in. "You can't. We're not. You didn't even." She couldn't seem to finish a sentence, her brain apparently short-circuiting from the information overload. "I can, we are, and I did. Mrs. Hanley's a great lawyer, by the way. Very professional. You should get one too." The Chinese food sat on the counter getting cold and congealed while Monica cycled through what I can only describe as the 5 stages of manipulation, a twisted version of grief that involved a lot more screaming and significantly less acceptance. Stage 1 was bargaining, which manifested as her pacing around the kitchen, making increasingly desperate offers like some kind of deranged game show host trying to keep a contestant from walking away with the prize money. "What if I go to therapy?" she said, her voice climbing higher with each word. "What if we go to couples counseling? What if I promise to never, ever do anything like that again? What if I get on my knees right now and beg you to reconsider?" I was still sitting at the table surrounded by divorce paperwork, eating lo mein straight from the container, because why dirty a plate when my life was already messy enough? "Monica, you standing on a chair at my birthday party wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. It was the culmination of months, years, really, of you treating me like I'm some kind of supporting character in your personal drama. Therapy isn't going to fix that. Couples counseling isn't going to magically make you respect me. and you getting on your knees would just be uncomfortable for both of us. Stage 2 was guilt, which kicked in around the time she realized bargaining wasn't working. She collapsed into one of the kitchen chairs and put her head in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs that I'm about 60% sure were genuine and 40% performance art. "How can you do this to me?" she wailed. "How can you just throw away 7 years like they meant nothing? Don't I deserve better than this? Don't I deserve a husband who fights for our marriage instead of just giving up?" I set down my low mane and looked at her with the kind of calm that probably made me look like a sociopath, but was actually just exhaustion wrapped in indifference. "You're right. You do deserve better. You deserve a husband who's willing to put up with your bullshit indefinitely, who'll let you walk all over him and never complain, who'll smile and nod while you publicly humiliate him and then apologize for existing. Unfortunately for you, I'm not that guy anymore, but I'm sure he's out there somewhere. Maybe check under doormat in the personals." Stage 3 was anger, and boy did it arrive with a vengeance. She stood up so fast her chair nearly fell over, her face red and blotchy from crying, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers that made her look like a very attractive, very furious raccoon. "You're doing this because of her, aren't you? Because of Sabrina. You're throwing away our marriage for my best friend. That's what this is really about. This has nothing to do with Sabrina and everything to do with you standing on furniture and announcing our private business to the neighborhood. But sure, if it makes you feel better to blame someone else for your problems, go ahead. You've been doing it our entire marriage. Why stop now?" She grabbed the nearest object, which happened to be the soy sauce packet from our Chinese food, and threw it at me. It bounced off my shoulder and splattered on the wall behind me, leaving a brown stain that would definitely require painting over. "I hate you," she screamed, and I had to give her credit for honesty. That was probably the most genuine thing she'd said to me in months. "There it is," I said, standing up and grabbing some paper towels to clean the wall. Finally, some actual truth. Was that so hard? Stage 4 was the nostalgia tour, which started around 9 o'clock after she'd exhausted herself with screaming and crying and had retreated to the living room couch to regroup. I could hear her in there flipping through what sounded like photo albums, and sure enough, when I walked past on my way to get more water, she had our wedding album spread across her lap, tears dripping onto the plastic-covered pages. "Remember our wedding?" she said, her voice small and broken. "Remember how happy we were? Remember our vows? For better or worse, Julian. For better or worse. You promised." I paused in the doorway, looking at her surrounded by photographs of younger versions of ourselves. Me in a tux that was slightly too big, her in a white dress that probably cost more than my first car, both of us smiling like we'd figured out some secret to happiness that nobody else knew. We looked so damn young, so stupid, so convinced that love was enough. "I remember," I said. "I also remember the worst part turning out to be about 90% of the marriage. Funny how that works." Stage 5 was blame, which honestly should have been stage 1 because that's where Monica always landed eventually. Everything was my fault. I didn't communicate enough. I worked too much. I didn't appreciate her. I didn't make her feel loved. I didn't understand her needs. I didn't try hard enough to make the marriage work. According to Monica's version of events, she was a perfect wife who'd been trying her best for 7 years while I'd been emotionally unavailable and distant, and basically the worst husband in the history of marriage. "You never even tried." She shouted at me around 10:30 when I was attempting to retreat to the bedroom for the night. "You just gave up. You just quit. You're a quitter, Julian. That's what you are." "You're absolutely right," I said, too tired to argue anymore. "I quit. I quit trying to be good enough for someone who'll never be satisfied. I quit walking on eggshells in my own house. I quit apologizing for having opinions and preferences and the audacity to exist as a separate human being. I quit accepting crumbs of affection and calling it love. So yeah, I'm a quitter, and I've never been prouder of anything in my entire life." Monday morning came with the kind of brutal clarity that only happens when you've spent the entire night listening to your soon-to-be ex-wife sob in the guest room while you stare at the ceiling wondering how your life got to this point. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and running on approximately 3 hours of sleep, but I also felt lighter than I had in years. Like I'd been carrying a boulder on my back, and someone had finally told me I was allowed to put it down. My phone started buzzing around 8. texts from friends and coworkers who'd apparently heard through the suburban gossip network that the Ross marriage was officially circling the drain. Most of them were surprisingly supportive, which either meant I had better friends than I thought or Monica had burned more bridges than I realized. Probably both. Kel texted, "Dude, heard you're finally pulling the plug. About damn time. Been watching you die slowly for years. Proud of you, man. My buddy Marcus from work. Monica just called Jen crying about you leaving her. Jen said to tell you she always knew you were too good for her, and also do you need a place to crash. Even my cousin Todd, who I hadn't talked to in like 2 years, heard about you and Monica. Saw it coming at your wedding TBH. She made you cut the cake with her hand on top of yours like you were a child. Red Flag City. But the most illuminating text came from Cal around noon, after I'd already fielded approximately 17 calls from various concerned parties. So apparently Monica tried to hook up with Trevor from her office like 3 weeks before your birthday party, and he turned her down hard. Denise heard it from Linda, who works with Monica's friend Beth. The whole open relationship thing was apparently her trying to save face after getting rejected. Thought you should know. I read that text about 5 times, letting the information sink in like water into a sponge. Trevor, who Monica had mentioned approximately 700 times over the past few months. Trevor, who was just a coworker and such a good friend and really understands me. Trevor, who she'd had coffee with and lunches with and late night work sessions with. Trevor, who'd apparently taken one look at her offer and said thanks, but no thanks. So the birthday party announcement wasn't about exploring new relationship dynamics or breaking free from societal constructs or any of that pseudo-intellectual bullshit she'd been spouting for months. It was about her trying to sleep with Trevor, getting rejected, and then publicly announcing an open relationship so she could pretend she'd wanted it all along. It was damage control. It was spin. It was Monica doing what Monica did best, rewriting the narrative so she came out looking good. I started laughing. Couldn't help it. Just sat there in my car in the work parking lot. I'd come in despite my fake food poisoning because sitting at home with Monica felt like volunteering for psychological torture, laughing like a maniac while people walked past giving me concerned looks. The whole thing was so absurdly, perfectly Monica. She tried to cheat, failed, and then decided to blow up our marriage rather than just admit she'd made a mistake and deal with the consequences like an adult. My phone buzzed again. Sabrina this time. Sabrina, heard you filed for divorce. Proud of you. She was never ready to lose control of you. Now she's watching you find yours. Keep going. You're doing great. I texted back. Just found out about Trevor. The whole thing makes sense now. Sabrina. Yep. She tried to monkey branch to him, fell flat on her face, and decided to burn the whole tree down rather than admit she slipped. Classic Monica. She needed this wake-up call. You both did. She wasn't wrong. Monica needed to learn that actions have consequences, and you can't just manipulate your way through life expecting everyone to accommodate your narcissism. And I needed to learn that leaving was an option, that I didn't have to stay in a situation that made me miserable just because I'd invested time in it. I went back to work, ignored 3 more calls from Monica, and spent the afternoon in meetings that were boring but blessedly drama-free. When I got home that evening, she was gone, probably at her mother's or Sabrina's, or wherever she went when she needed people to tell her she was right and I was wrong. The house was quiet, peaceful mine. I ordered pizza, again, because apparently that was my coping mechanism now, and watched mindless TV until I fell asleep on the couch. And for the first time in weeks, I slept through the entire night without waking up to the sound of Monica crying or pacing or having some kind of emotional crisis that required my immediate attention. I slept better than I had in 7 years. 2 months felt like 2 years and also 2 minutes simultaneously, which is apparently what happens when you're watching your old life disintegrate while your new one slowly assembles itself from the wreckage. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I expected, mainly because Monica finally realized that crying and manipulation weren't admissible evidence in family court, and her lawyer, some guy named Richard who wore too much cologne and kept calling me chief, kept advising her to just sign the papers and move on with dignity intact. She didn't listen at first, obviously, because Monica had never met a dramatic gesture she didn't want to make her signature move. There were late-night phone calls where she sobbed about how she'd changed, therapy sessions she'd started attending like they were going to earn her a gold star, promises that she could be the wife I deserved, if I'd just give her one more chance. Maybe I can, she said during our final meeting at Mrs. Hanley's office, her eyes red and puffy from what I assumed was either genuine remorse or really committed acting. Maybe I can be that person now. The person you needed me to be. I looked at her across that conference table with its fake wood finish and thought about all the versions of Monica I'd seen over 7 years. The charming one, the manipulative one, the victim, the aggressor, the one who promised change, and the one who delivered nothing but more of the same chaos wrapped in different packaging. Maybe you can, I said, and I meant it. People could change. Theoretically. But not for me. Not anymore. The papers were signed. The marriage was over. And honestly, I felt nothing but relief. Cal threw another party exactly 1 year after the birthday bombshell, and I showed up without the weight of a failing marriage crushing my chest. Same house, same mediocre music, same neighbors pretending their lives weren't boring. But this time, I wasn't holding a beer like a life raft. People kept asking where Monica was, probably explaining open relationships to her therapist. I said, and the whole backyard erupted in laughter. Turned out everyone had been waiting for permission to stop pretending our marriage wasn't a dumpster fire. Sabrina was there too, leaning against the patio railing telling stories that had people hanging on every word. We'd stayed friends, good friends, the kind built on mutual respect instead of drama. No romance, just peace. Later that night, driving home through familiar streets that somehow looked different now, I thought about that chair Monica had climbed on, that smirk on her face, that moment she'd tried to humiliate me and accidentally set me free instead. That was the night I stopped being her punchline and became my own man. The party meant to destroy me became the night I reclaimed my life. And I'd do it again, every awkward, glorious, liberating second of it.